Good morning, everybody. Doesn't want me to speak. I'm being silenced by the microphone. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of the Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Kate Oliver, Chair of the Planning Committee, and I'll be chairing the meeting. To begin the meeting, there are a few matters of housekeeping. There are no practice alarms planned for this meeting, so if an alarm does sound, please evacuate City Hall by going down the main staircase and out to the War Memorial in front of City Hall. This meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube page and will be available after the meeting. Please would speakers use microphones more competently than me to press the button at all times and speak directly into the microphone, and would participants please mute the microphones when they're not speaking. So introductions. Members of the committee and officers will introduce themselves, starting from my left.
Good morning. I'm Councillor Sophia Delacorte.
Morning, Councillor Charlie Kane.
Councillor Tim Day.
Councillor Keith Driver.
Councillor Amanda Fox.
Councillor Adam Giles, and I'm subbing for Councillor Chris Smith today.
Councillor Emma Hampton.
Councillor Ash Haynes.
Morning, it's Councillor Tammy Sell.
Councillor Mike Stonold. Morning, I'm David Parkin. I'm the Development Manager for the City Council.
Morning, I'm Laura Emerson. Laura Emerson, Development Management Team Leader.
I'm Danny Howard. I'm Case Officer for 37 Plumstead Road.
Jodie Cunnington-Brock, Lead Advisor.
Leonie Berwick, Senior Committee Officer.
Thank you. And Councillor Day is substituting for Councillor Conroy. No, that's great. Thank you. Members of the committee may use electronic devices to access their meeting papers, but we do ask that members don't use these devices to message anyone in or outside the meeting regarding the applications under discussion, and members are reminded not to discuss any of the applications during the breaks. Visitors are welcome to use mobile phones and other devices, including cameras, but please use them discreetly, set them to silent, and do not use voice or camera flash functions. We'll have a short break at 12 and between 1 and 2 if there is any business left to be resolved. And whilst determination of a planning application is not a quasi-judicial process, unlike certain licensing functions carried out by the local authority, it is a formal administrative process involving the application of national and local policies, reference to legislation and case law, as well as rules of procedure, rights of appeal, and an expectation that people will act reasonably and fairly. All involved in these decisions should remember that the possibility that an aggrieved party may seek a judicial review and/or complain to the Ombudsman on grounds of maladministration or a breach of the authority's code. Okay. On to item 1, apologies for absence. So as you've heard, we've received apologies from Councillors Conroy and Councillor Chris Smith, and Councillors Day and Giles are acting as substitutes. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, just to note that there's also apologies from Councillor Lubbock.
Yes, sorry, apologies from Councillor Lubbock too. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest on items on the agenda, please? So, Councillor Driver.
Yeah, on 2 of the items, 3.2 and 3.4, I remember a camera. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. And Councillor Day.
Yes, I had a resident contact me with an objection. I did tell them to contact the City Council directly, and I will be approaching this with an open mind, you know, with no conflicts or anything. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's on the first item on Plumstead Road application, isn't it? Which is reference report titled 26/00264/F, just for clarity. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor.
I don't think it's necessary, but I've also been contacted by several residents in relation to the first application, but I haven't expressed any view on it prior to the meeting, and I'm not predetermined.
Okay, thank you. So on to item 3.1, which is reference 26/00264/F 37 Plumstead Road. Could I ask Danny Howard to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. So the application today is 26/00264/F at 37 Plumstead Road. And the proposal was alterations to form takeaway fast food outlet, installation of mechanical extract system, and retrospective installation of decking and bin store to front. The site is outlined in red here and is on the north side of Plumstead Road. As you can see from the existing plans, the building was originally a single dwelling, and in the early 90s was subdivided to have a residential flat at the first floor and have what was previously A1 retail floor space at the ground for the entirety of the ground floor, which then became Class E when the use class order changed in 2020. The ground floor has historically been used as both a single unit and as two separate units, and currently is in use as two separate units, with the side here as a barber shop and the unit here, which is within the red line, was last used as a cafe. That was, under Class E use. It's currently vacant. So the first part of the proposal is the change of use of the unit to a hot food takeaway, which would be a sui generis use class. The proposal also includes the proposed installation of mechanical ventilation with a flue extending from the east side roof slope, shown here. There is existing timber decking and a balustrade, which was installed under the previous use by the previous users. That is proposing to be retained, but it does require planning permission. So the retrospective permission for that decking is being sought. For clarity, the change of use has not taken place and the change of use is proposed. The proposal also includes installation of a cycle shelter and storage adjacent the decking here, which will be in front of the barber's shop. That is under land which is under the same which is under the same ownership as the subject unit, and formation of a bin store in the front corner here. So this is a view of the site as existing. Here you can see the decking, which has been already installed and is sought to be retained. The posts don't form part, the timber posts that you can see there don't form part of the proposal and would need to be removed. The access to the decking is currently central here, and it's proposed to be moved to the side so that access to the site would be from within the site area here. As you can see, Plumstead Road is a double yellowed road, so there's no parking available on the street outside of the venue, and previously the area covered by the decking would have been open space in the same way that you can see here, and would have provided off-road parking for approximately 2 cars that would have been able to access the site via the dropped curb that you can see here. Objections have been received regarding highway safety and inadequate parking on site, and it is acknowledged that the removal of the decking does remove available parking spaces from in front of the unit. However, the existing site, as you can see here, there is a bus stop directly adjacent to the site, And to use those parking spaces would involve a car crossing over the highway and the bus stop to park in front. And if the parking spaces were occupied, there's no reasonably safe way for cars to exit the site in a forward gear without having to manoeuvre across the pavement in several different ways. And comments from highways are supportive of the changes in that they would actually improve the highway safety of the site by not allowing cars to cross over the bus stop and the pavement in front of the unit in that way. You can also see the roof slope here is where the mechanical ventilation flue will be installed. We have proposed a condition for the flue that would require additional details to be submitted to control a silencer and odour filtration to ensure adequate protection of neighbouring amenities. As you can see from the report, objections have also been received regarding noise and disturbance, potential noise and disturbance from the mechanical ventilation and disturbance from odour. Environmental Protection have been consulted and are happy that the noise impact assessment demonstrates that there will be a 14 decibel increase above base sound level by the flue, but that can be adequately controlled with proper mitigation by the form of silencers, and the condition seeks to protect that. To give a better view of the front of the site, here you can see the area where that will be used for cycle parking is to the front here, and the access, as I said, will be moved by a ramp here. The ramp will be contained within the decking, and there is adequate space for it to comply with the necessary regulations for accessibility. And it would also be wide enough to allow bins to be moved from the storage and stored onto within the site on collection day. That would avoid further obstruction of the pavement and potential users of the bus stop. The rest of the space in front of the unit would be available for the parking of vehicles if necessary, and would be retained used by the barbershop as well when the barbershop is open during daytime hours. The thought is that when the takeaway is open in the evening after barbershop opening, there will be less competition for that space. It's also the trend towards delivery services is that they mostly use e-bikes and mopeds now, and that the majority of visitors to the site would not be using cars, and there would be adequate cycle storage provided by the shelter, and further storage for bikes and mopeds could be used within the decking. To address concerns regarding potential noise and disturbance from people congregating outside, we're also proposing that there will be a condition that ensures no tables or chairs can be installed within the decking area at any point in perpetuity of the proposed use. From this side here, you can see the access to the front area for vehicles is from Vincent Road. It is very close to the junction with Palmstead Road, and is secured by double yellow lines to ensure that people shouldn't be parking within the distance of the access, which would retain some visibility. Residents' letters of objection have raised serious concerns regarding the existing parking situation on Vincent Road, particularly where the use would extend into the evening, where there is more demand for parking from residents outside of usual daytime working hours. The proposed use would generally invite a shorter stopping time for vehicles. There's a very small provision for in the internal waiting area. There's not room for tables and chairs inside, and there could be a small area for people to stand and eat food quickly, but otherwise the thought is people will visit, collect their food and leave. Therefore, the demand on parking would be less than the current use as a cafe or restaurant, which would invite people who are travelling by car to stay and park for longer periods of time. We've also proposed a condition on opening hours to restrict opening hours between 7 and 11 to reduce the potential impact on local amenity. And we're also conditioning that the bin store must be made available for use prior to first use, and that cycle parking will also be installed prior to first use. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I ask Jane Chapman to speak in objection, please? And you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jane and a resident of Vincent Road. I wrote an email on the 19th and 20th of May and again on the 23rd of July this year stating my objections to the planning application that we're talking about. Without wishing to bore you all, I will give you some bullet points. Illegal parking, cooking smells, possibly an increase of vermin, extra noise from the extractor fan until 11 p.m. every evening, Deliveroo and Just Eat bikes arriving and leaving, which could interfere with the bus stop just outside the premises. We already have a plethora of takeaway outlets within walking distance of 37 Plumstead Road, namely 2 kebab and burger places, 3 pizza outlets, 3 Chinese takeaways, and 3 fish and chip shops. Are we not already promoting a plentiful supply to the local community? How does moving the bins to the front of the building alleviate the inevitable parking issues? How does this create additional parking space when the decking is to remain in position? Also, why does the decking have to stay if the business is to be a takeaway? The illegal parking and the noise was a real problem when it was the cafe. I anticipate that this will be much worse. We also have to consider the light pollution impacting on the residents living opposite the premises. I have not been reassured that this new application is in any way improved on the last one. Nothing has changed. There are a few other points I'd like to make. Apparently, the application is recommended for approval. How can this be when we're only now having the committee meeting to discuss this? Has there been a site inspection? Does anyone understand how the proposed development will affect the area and the people living beside it? Why is there no right of appeal for objectors, but there are for the applicant? In my opinion, this does not appear to be democratic, when I know from the council's constitution that it prides itself on being so. I would be grateful if this meeting could clarify the reasoning behind the possible approval of this application. A final point. Why are we trying to promote more unhealthy food outlets in our fine city? Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you. Can I ask Andy Larkin to speak in objection, please? And you also have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I am here in a personal level, but also representing a considerable number of residents from Vincent Road who, because of the time of this meeting, are unable to attend. They have to go to work. So upwards of 25 people have made comments on our local WhatsApp group, and I'm here on their behalf as a collection. Councillor Day is well aware that we have an ongoing problem on Britannia Road and Vincent Road with speeding cars, boy racers, congregation of youths making considerable amounts of noise. It's become a blight for everybody living on Vincent Road and Britannia Road. This is an example of how much of a blight it is. We do not need any more takeaways. We do not need any more fast food restaurants. We have more than enough. I see from your photographs that none were taken at night. At night, parking on Vincent Road and Britannia Road is a completely different situation. The previous iteration of this establishment, cars were parked on double yellow lines across the pavements, blocking the pavements, and the bins were strewn everywhere. This is not a personal slight on the person that is putting forward this application. It's just an observation of somebody that lives on Vincent Road. My life is on Vincent Road. I pay my council taxes to live on Vincent Road, and I feel that this application should be rejected and more consideration should be given to the people that make their lives in the area, not just their businesses. We have an ongoing situation with terrible traffic that Councillor Day is involved in, that the planning department, the highways are involved in. We have a major meeting in September. I would rather you put this decision off until the outcome of that meeting has been resolved, because this problem is getting worse, not better. I've lived on Vincent Road for nearly 2 years. The traffic and the speed has multiplied. Every couple of months it gets worse, and the police log department can verify that the calls from Britannia Road and Vincent Road have multiplied by many tens in the last 6 months. I urge you to hear the objections of people, and I have to say this and stress this, that live in the area. It is where our homes are, it is where our lives are, and it is a blight on all of us living in what is a very diverse and close-knit community. I urge you all to reject it on behalf of the people that live, pay their council taxes, and also vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I now ask Christina Arthurton to speak in objection, and you also have 3 minutes. Thank you.
I want the UK economy to flourish. I support small businesses, but safety to pedestrians and road users must be paramount, and this proposal will be dangerous. Thank you. Plumstead Road, looking down Vincent Road, a residential street, frequently insufficient parking and already illegal parking, especially at the junction. The black car on the right is on double yellows. Vincent Road, looking towards Plumstead Road, and again, insufficient and illegal parking already occurring. The blue car on doubles moved back into the white car, manoeuvring into the space behind it. The collision was hard. It could have been a pedestrian. Illegal parking at the proposed site obscures the busy junction. Looking along Belsize Road, the report says additional staff, customer parking is to be found on adjacent streets. Where? It's unrealistic. Please note at the end of the street is the junior school, to which many families and children walk twice a day. Vincent Road back towards the junction. Vincent Road back towards the junction with Plumstead Road shows the competitive parking, and 2 vehicles cannot pass in these conditions, a situation which will be exacerbated by the proposed site. Shows the dropped curve at Vincent Road and the likely way vehicles and mopeds will enter and exit and enter and exit the forecourt. Turning from the main road, they're likely cut across the junction, which will be very, very unsafe. It shows the close proximity of the 2 bus stops on either side of the road. The next one, don't bother to read. Let me just tell you that Plumstead Road is a busy arterial route into and out of the city. 5 different buses, 1 every 10 minutes, run between 7 AM and 10:46 PM daily, not 7 PM as in the report. The report is incorrect. More buses mean more traffic congestion at stops, more pedestrian movement in front and around of the busy junction, and increasing risk to pedestrians and road users. Shows the limited parking for 1 vehicle And I understand, I mean, Leonie, you talk about the competition for parking when the Barber's is shut, but realistically, where is the parking? The space will be further reduced by the bike stand, and there's likely to be mopeds and bikes, vehicles converging from all directions, resulting in traffic and parking hazards at this site. In comparison,
Excuse me, could I ask you to finish as it's gone well past 3 minutes?
Sorry?
Could you wrap up because it's past the 3 minutes, but
okay. In comparison, the other sites have, which we've already been mentioned, have parked vehicles on both, have parking bays on both on the road and also a slip road. May I just very, very quickly point out that the pedestrians cut inside of the the speed line when they go to access the bus stop, putting themselves potentially in danger. And if I could just go to the last, please, very, very quickly to the very last slide.
Sorry, I can't because otherwise everybody else should have the same
I fully
amount of
understand,
time.
but
Thank you. We do need to stop now, otherwise we're favouring some people over others. Thank you. And could I ask officers just to read a statement on behalf of an objector? Miss Atherton.
Miss Atherton, thank you. We've had sufficient time. Thank you.
Okay, I'll now read out a statement on behalf of an objector who couldn't be here. I am a long-standing resident of Vincent Road. With regard to the proposed takeaway, I have 4 main concerns. 1. Smell. Food smell carries a long distance where houses are in close proximity. Though the plans include a carbon filter in the extractor fan, it will not be possible to contain or remove all odours produced by the restaurant. Persistent smell would be unpleasant for nearby residents who use their gardens for leisure, hanging out washing, and we must be able to open windows without worry. Food smell can also disrupt sleep, put off potential buyers and prevent property sales or lower house prices. Bins can smell and attract vermin. 2. Traffic and parking. Parking along Vincent Road for residents is already very difficult, especially after 4 p.m. There is no permit parking, so a takeaway will only make this problem worse. Both Britannia Road and Vincent Road already receive nuisance traffic and noise from boy racers parked on the heath, especially in the evenings. A takeaway could exacerbate this problem. 3. Noise. A takeaway would generate more noise, car doors, voices, engines, along what is currently a quiet residential road with relatively little footfall. The noise impact assessment states that the extractor fan will produce noise above the background level of the noise at this location. It suggests mitigation in the form of a silencer. 4. Opening hours. The proposed opening hours appear to have been extended to 7 a.m. till 11 p.m. daily. Perhaps this could be clarified. This does not allow residents a break from the constant activity or smell. I do not think this is reasonable, particularly in a residential area, and I strongly object to the business being allowed to open all day and evening, 7 days a week. If the proposal goes ahead, I think residents would feel more receptive if they could be provided with assurances that 1, there will not be a persistent smell emanating from the restaurant, and that there will be no release of odours from the kitchens to the surrounding properties. If the proposal is agreed, stipulations should be included on the planning consent to ensure that doors and windows are kept closed, that the extraction fans are fitted with a silencer, and that carbon filters are replaced and maintained regularly in accordance with manufacturer specifications. 2. Parking has been carefully considered with space and adequate signage provided directly outside the front of the takeaway on Plumstead Road to keep traffic off Vincent Road. And 3. Opening hours are reduced from the hours proposed to give residents respite with time and days off. I have no objection to generally to business use of the property. I just believe there are other uses that are potentially less impactful to nearby residents. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to voice my concerns, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
There's
And
one other statement.
We have another statement to be read by by Lara. Thank you.
Final statement on behalf of another applicant, another objector. Previously, this property was clearly used for illegal activity, with police attending on multiple occasions. The men who used to frequent the cafe have been seen regularly recently inside the building and adjoining barbers. With the retained decking, the previous behaviours of open drug use and dealing, illegal parking, dangerous driving, and a generally horrible environment will be reinstated in an area already more than well provisioned when it comes to takeaways. Vincent Road and Britannia Road have had a lot of issues recently with antisocial behaviour up on the heath, and we simply don't want yet more of this at the other end of our road. The road has a lot of young families on it, so there is understandably a lot of apprehension to these plans. And of course, with this opposition to them, on this basis alone, I implore you to reject these plans.
Thank you. And now, can I ask Andy Skendry to speak as the applicant, please? And Mr. Skendry, you have 6 minutes. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Andy Skendry. I am from Albania. I born in Albania. After I finished school, I studied in Bulgaria, international relation. After Bulgaria, I used to work in the kitchen as well. After Bulgaria, I moved and lived in Australia for 3 years, and there after London, Can you hear now? Okay. And I used to work in Norwich market like a business partner for more than 5 years. After New Year this year, we be separate, and I talked with my friend. I used to have haircut in Plumstead Road. He said to me, this one is terrible place because what you say before, and you can do it takeaway because you can make a nice food and homemade. I understand every neighbor for their complaint about the parking and everything, but I will try all the best with the building company to take the noise out, to not make like a delivery with a car, but only with bicycle. Sorry for my English, it's not the best one, but I try to do the best of my side. And I will make nice food for the community living there and to be like family business. I want to run like family business and not the other things. And for the people working near to the prison, to come there to enjoy my food, for the people living in the area to come there with their family, with their kids, and to enjoy my food. I'm not opening a business to make a trouble for the neighbor. I will be the nice person, like maybe some of you know me from the Norwich market. I used to work there in Italian street food for a long time. And now I decide to open my business. For the noise and for the smell, I talk with my building company. They do everything silence to not have noise, and with a filter, the best one to not have smell. And the other one, my food not smell the bad because it's everything homemade. I'm not coming there to make terrible for the people living in area because will be the same for me to living in one place, and if something going wrong to come here like the neighbors coming and to have complained. I understand everybody, but I try from my side the best one to be nice with everyone there, with the people, when the people coming, family people with the kids, to enjoy the food and to be happy all the time they will come to my place. And I will try my best to keep the area clean, no noise, because it's my family business. I'm not coming there to have a trouble with a neighbor or nobody. Only quiet business. This is from my side, and thank you for understanding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do members have any questions on the report? Councillor Fox indicated first. I don't know if I've seen anyone else indicating yet. And Councillor Giles after that.
Yeah, so obviously like the residents have like a number of concerns and I can understand those, but I know that several of them aren't material planning concerns. So I just want to ask about a couple of things, whether they are things we could do. So in one of the letters that Laura, you read out, it said about having a restriction on or something in the plans where we could say that the filters had to have a schedule of maintenance and to make certain that the smell and the silencers that they were working effectively, like going forwards after the plans if they're approved. And the other thing is, like, we've seen evidence that there are parking issues there, that people aren't taking the double yellow line seriously, but I understand that's an enforcement issue, and it's my understanding that the fact that an enforcement issue isn't being adhered to isn't something we can take into consideration. Is that correct?
So in terms of ensuring proper maintenance of the mitigation installed with the flue, that the details can be included in the wording of that condition, but the wording of the condition will also be that the details as approved will need to be kept in good working order for the duration of the use or in perpetuity.
I just respond on the parking point. The fact existing parking problems, no, we can't take into account. However, the impact of this proposed use on the surrounding area and exacerbating, making worse the existing parking issues is a material planning consideration. And we are considering the impacts of this use on the surrounding area. It's a relatively small takeaway, and experience tells us that the majority of visitors taking deliveries will likely visit by bike and moped. Unlikely to be a huge increase in the number of cars. So as decision makers, we need to bear that in mind and be proportionate with the impacts that we're considering.
Chair, if I could just come back on that really quickly. Is it possible to have it as a condition that the deliveries could be done by bike and moped alone?
I would advise that would be very difficult to enforce because it would require us to know that deliveries are being taken by other means and be able to do something about it. It would be really difficult for us to actually enforce that condition, so I'd probably advise against it.
Thank you. I have Councillor Giles next.
Thank you. I've got a few questions, but I'll go with the first one. So in relation to DM 24.2, I wonder if you could comment a bit further on the sustainability of the location of the proposed hot food takeaway premises in light of the residential nature of the area and the possibility of exacerbating the existing parking and highways issues. Thank you.
So yeah, part B of DM 24 states regarding that the proposal has safe and convenient access and would not be detrimental to highway or pedestrian safety.
So I'm looking at 24.2 rather than 24B. In the supplementary text. I can read it out if it helps, but I appreciate that's probably not proper. So
Sorry, no, it's just helpful to be able to have it in. So 24.2 refers more to the criterion policies DN20 and DN21, which relate to retail frontages and the retention of retail use. The proposed use is not a retail use, and it's not within a defined centre. So the application of 24.2 is not sort of directly applicable to this site in that respect.
So yeah, just to elaborate on that, 24.2 does specifically this. It's worth noting that this is supplementary text and not part of the actual policy. Nevertheless, it is certainly a material consideration in the consideration of this application. DM24, for anyone wondering, DM24 relates specifically to hot food takeaways. The supplementary text 24.2 does say locations within defined centres will generally be preferred over freestanding hot food takeaways outside centres, as the latter would tend to lead to a less accessible pattern of development, potentially attracting car-borne customers into residential areas and adding to problems for noise and disturbance, parking and highway safety. This site is not within a defined centre, so it is less preferable in that regard. However, there are a number of it's not an entirely residential area. There are other commercial uses in the general vicinity, but yes, you're right, Councillor Giles, that it's not within a defined centre.
Could I just come back on that? I think it's important to note that there is an existing Class E use there. And you're comparing, as Lara has said already, you're comparing the impact of that existing Class E use, which would include a restaurant, which is currently unrestricted in terms of its opening hours, against this hot food takeaway. So you're not starting with a blank sheet of paper. The existing use already generates traffic movements, pedestrian movements. So from a planning point of view, you're looking at how the proposed hot food takeaway changes, either for the better or for the worse, that pattern of movement and use. Thank you.
And I think I have Councillor Driver next and then Councillor Day.
Yeah, my question is on section 17 of the Crime and Disorder Act. I've seen that officers have decided that there's nothing going on, and by granting this planning permission, it all goes with the Act of 1998. Did you get in touch with the police and find out how many times the police have actually been called to this premises over the last year? I see the police didn't actually put an ejection in or an approval in either. There's nothing in there from the police at all. But did you consult the police when you were going through, or did you just read the act and think, oh, that'll be okay, we can put it through on that because we believe that's okay? But one of the statements you had said the police were called quite a lot to that premises with the same people who've got to be there.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take that one. I mean, how many times the police were called to the previous use is not really germane to the consideration of this particular application. That's not relevant. You're looking as a planning committee and as the local planning authority, you're looking at the impacts of the use. So again, I come back to the point that you're looking at whether or not, regardless of who runs it, because we have to kind of take personalities out of the equation when we're talking about planning. It's the land use. So the previous use as a Class E restaurant compared to the proposed use as a sui generis hot food takeaway. That's what you're looking at. You're not looking at the you're not looking at the activities of the people or persons who either frequented the previous use or the characters involved in that previous use compared to the people involved with this particular use. You're restricted to the impacts of that land use. So again, you've got to try and take the personalities out of the equation. That then becomes a police matter, because we're not, as a planning authority, here to kind of enforce against criminal activity. That's a matter for the police.
Can I also just add that my understanding is that the applicant has taken on the lease of the unit, but was not in control of the previous use. But also, if we don't have any evidence of criminal activity, we can't take that in as a material consideration with regards to the applicant. So that's not the police haven't been formally consulted on this application, no.
I would suggest that's more of a licensing function if that was appropriate, but it's some planning. Councillor Day next, please.
Thank you. I do have some questions regarding the possibility of antisocial behaviour. Okay, because as you're probably aware, there is a lot of it in that area of the division. Again, touching on the police and what have you, and I'm in constant contact with Sergeant Burwood. Have there been any measures put in place to, kind of stop it from happening from your point, from your situation?
So, as we've said, we can't control previous instances of antisocial behaviour, but in terms of the proposed application, a canopy over the decking was originally part of the proposal as submitted, and that has been removed. And the condition to ensure that no tables and chairs will be placed in the decking area in front of the property would naturally discourage congregation of people and disturbance or antisocial behaviour from individuals congregating in front of the unit. That is reasonably as far as we can control the physical elements of the site to sort of discourage congregation. The nature of the use as a takeaway also, as we've said previously, involves short stay. It doesn't invite people to stay for long periods of time to drink, eat outside, become intoxicated, create antisocial behaviours or feelings of unsafety in that way. Whereas, and in regards to the current use of the site as Class E, which could be used as a cafe or restaurant and does not have controls in place for opening hours or the provision of tables and chairs in front of the building, the controls that we have in terms of the proposal are more likely to result in less antisocial behaviours.
Yeah, is it a follow-up or okay. Yeah, that's fine, yes.
Yeah, so as you can see, you've said that there's enough parking for 2 cars. On the picture, you can clearly see that it's not really sufficient. So, I mean, are you counting on people using available spaces in adjacent streets and what have you? Because obviously, if it's going to be a fast food outlet, it's going to be quite busy. And obviously, the residents living there, already fighting for parking. Have there been any other plans put in place by yourselves to help the situation?
So it's one. There'd be. We're not saying that 2 cars could fit in front of the barber shop there. It would just be space for 1 car. In terms of the impact on surrounding parking, I think we've covered that several times already. But yeah, the parking in the adjacent streets is not controlled. It's not a controlled parking zone. There are currently no restrictions in place to stop people, non-residents, parking in the street. So if additional cars were to visit the site, they would need to seek parking in other areas where available. And as we said previously, due to the nature of the proposed use, the likelihood of the cars wouldn't need to stop for long periods of time. So on balance against the existing use, the impact on parking availability is not considered to sort of notably increase or be potentially significantly harmful.
reasonable to say, and if you pick that up. I next have Councillor Delacourte.
Thank you. So just for my own understanding, I take into consideration the residents' concerns about the parking. So I'm assuming when this was a cafe before, that would mean that people would stay longer. I'm assuming because people would park and then go into the cafe. It was kind of a sit-in kind of place. So surely by having this as a takeaway, it means that it's more likely to be bikes, mopeds, and people are staying for a shorter period of time. I know that that doesn't resolve the parking issue, but just so I'm kind of getting that clearer idea in my head, is that correct?
Yes, that's been part of the judgment and assessment. Yeah.
Okay. And also from an antisocial behaviour point of view, again, I know we've had some talk about, you know, people congregating and things like that, but also to have this application go through because they're becoming a takeaway and they're serving hot food until potentially 11 p.m. that would have gone through licensing, so they would have looked at potential background and things like that, things that we can't consider here as well.
I understand. I don't think they don't need a license to serve hot food before 11 p.m. It would be after 11 if after 11 p.m. would require a license.
Okay, thank you. I was just trying to see like what kind of things had been done already. One thing finally, I know that the current hours that they've been proposed is 7 a.m. till 11 p.m. Is that kind of the hours that they will be open, or is that the hours that they can be open? Because I think that's a concern for current residents, that they're going to be open for over 12 hours a day, or is that just the hours that they could be open from?
Those are the hours that we have controlled. The hours outside of that 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. More noise sensitive as nighttime hours, sleeping hours. So that's the reason for the condition responding to those hours. But the choice of when the business is open and on which days would be down to the applicant, so long as they are within those hours.
Sorry, can I just come back on that? In terms of your assessment, you need to assume that it's going to be open for the whole length, so from 7 until 11, because that's what they can do within those hours. If they choose to open less, then yeah, that's their choice. But in terms of assessing the impact, you have to assess it as though it's open till 11.
Okay, thank you.
I've Councillor Searle and then Councillor Stonard.
Oh, it was already on. We've been talking a lot about parking. Since we're considering the change of use, some of the opposers brought up road safety. So specifically that junction that we looked at with the drop curb on the corner. So my fear would be that an increase in traffic of delivery vehicles, whether they're cars or bikes or mopeds, that would cause cutting across, which is a road safety concern. We also have, obviously, like, it's a very busy arterial road with lots of buses, and there's a bus stop directly outside. The change of use, would that impact, for example, the frequency of like food delivery, as in like service vehicles, where they're going to park, how they're going to park? Will that cause blocking in the road? Will that impact road safety? So yeah, that's my point here. I don't think that the change of use, if we consider it before the cafe, I don't think that the change of use will impact parking compared to the Class E use, but it may impact road safety. And is that a material concern?
Sorry, so the question is
essentially, I mean, because we're considering the change, it's turning off. My question is sort of the change of use and the change in traffic as a result of the change of use, is the road safety concerns part of the material considerations that we can consider?
Yes, yeah, that is part of the consideration.
Could I clarify that? So Councillor Searle also mentioned about delivery vehicles. So nowadays takeaways tend to attract more fewer cars and more bikes, mopeds, etc. But when it comes to delivery, yeah, like how will that impact? And because we're considering use from a restaurant to takeaway premises, how do we consider that in our deliberations?
In terms of deliveries to the site, like the delivery of goods for use by the business.
That was something I was talking about. For example, large like lorries and stuff. I know that a restaurant would have those deliveries. Are we still able to consider the impact on road safety of larger vehicles delivering to the site?
Yeah. So in terms of deliveries to the site, the impact of takeaway would be similar to the existing use under Class E. So there's not considered to be a likely increase in safety issues in that respect from the proposed use. That was also touched on in Highways comments, that delivery vehicles could reasonably stop quickly outside of the site without causing safety issues.
Sorry, could I just make a point about vehicles? I think the point has already been made before, but we've talked about people collecting and people delivering from fast food from the premises. There is, I think, an increase in the use of e-bikes and bicycles and things like that. But we did previously talk, and I think Councillor Fox, you brought this up, that they will be able to use cars to deliver from. So we can't guarantee that all the deliveries will be by e-bike and bicycle and moped, but there is a general move to an increased proportion of deliveries taking place by that means, but we can't control that absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Stannard.
Thank you, Chair. I just got a couple of questions, which is around the extraction, mechanical extraction, around noise and odour. I read in the papers that the noise by use, I think, of a silencer could be completely mitigated. I just want to confirm that that's my understanding is correct. And then my second question is, in terms of odour, how effective is the mechanical ventilation in addressing odour problems? Is it completely effective or only partially effective?
So, sorry, the first part of your question in terms of noise, the silencer, yes. So the noise impact assessment identified on the proposed extraction a 14 decibel increase against background noise. That, and also recommended that a silencer could be fitted that can provide 14 decibels of mitigation. So it is possible to reduce that, and that is what the condition is proposed to. The condition seeking details of the materials is proposed to ensure that that does provide that. And that would be the same for odour control. Those are the details we are seeking through that condition to ensure that proper mitigation for odour filtration is incorporated within that ventilation system.
That's total mitigation.
Yeah, so that's what we don't have details of the odour control, so that's what we are conditioning. Those would be the details that we will assess.
Yeah, just come back quickly on that. So, is it possible that they could that there could be a proposal for a level of odour control which would completely eliminate odour? Is that theoretically possible?
I think just I'll come back on that. I think it's on systems aren't 100%, so there might be some residual odour, but the again, conditioning details through for approval via environmental protection is a fairly standard process, and we've used it effectively in other parts of the city to control odour to an acceptable level. Again, we're not about removing any change, we're kind of about managing that change so it's an acceptable level. So I'm not going to sit here and say that you won't ever smell what's coming out of the kitchens, but it will be, it can be reduced and managed so that the impact isn't material.
And can I just clarify something? So with the existing permission, that would be restaurant and there's nothing to stop people taking food away from the premises as well? Am I wrong?
So the lawful use of the site is Class E, and that encompasses a whole range of different commercial and business uses, including a cafe, which has previously been used as. It would also include things like a shop or a hairdresser, office, gym, all sorts of things. But with the use of it as a cafe, it would need to be predominantly food that is eaten on site in order for it to fit within that use class. But there could be an element of takeaway food associated with a cafe. And we have to also remember that the hours of use were not controlled under the previous use, the previous use as a cafe. So those uses could extend beyond the opening hours that we're recommending.
Thank you. And just one other question with regard to the customer bin outside. I just wanted to confirm it's bin for customer use. This is part of the conditions installed and retained externally. So that's not a street bin that would be emptied by the council contractor. That would be the responsibility of the business to deal with that.
Yeah, so the condition would ensure that it's installed within the site, but not within the bin store, so that it is accessible to customers.
Thank you. So there's no more questions. We shall move to debate. Oh, sorry, Councillor Giles.
Thank you.
The car and bike storage, so the cycle shelter and the car parking space is not provided within the decking.
No, but the decking reduces the amount of space out the front, so that all that has to be encompassed within that remaining space.
Oh, yes, yeah, we have measurements on the scale plans.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So we'll now move on to debate. Does anyone have a point to make? Thank you, Councillor Giles, and then Councillor Fox.
Chair, I did want to ask a question, if that's permissible. Thanks. I wanted to ask about the many residents that have made allegations in relation to crime, disorder, drug-related issues from the current properties. In the absence of police representation, what weight can be placed on that when assessing whether this could change of use could exacerbate those without a police representation?
Okay, as I said in response to Councillor Driver's question, you're looking at the implications of the land use, not the individuals involved in carrying out that land use. We could grant consent for our house and it could be used as a drug den, it could be used for all kinds of illegal activities. That's not a material consideration that we can take into account, and we don't really need the police to effectively kind of tell us that, because that then kind of passes over into their purview, and they're the authority to kind of take any action against it. If, and I say if, because we don't have, we've got allegations, but if the previous use was being used for criminal activity, again, that is an issue that the police would need to respond to. in the same way that if they, and again, it's not about the individuals, it's about the land use. So going from a restaurant to a hot food takeaway, in terms of criminal activity, the propensity for criminal activity to take place doesn't change between those two uses. You can kind of come to some conclusion about antisocial behaviour, but criminal activity and antisocial behaviour are two different things. The antisocial behaviour may arise from increased and also an impact on amenity, which again are two slightly different things. But there's no reason to believe that people going to a hot food takeaway would not behave reasonably. I mean, we're talking about a hot food takeaway. We're not talking about the individuals involved. It can be any kind of hot food. It could actually be a fish and chip shop. It could be anything. It could be selling falafel. It could be selling whatever. We've got to take the personalities out of this and look at the land use, and would hot food takeaway in and of itself give rise to additional crime and antisocial behaviour. Danny's talked about the proposal in terms of kind of the antisocial behaviour in terms of dropping litter. There's a proposal in the application to have a condition that there's a litter bin provided as part of the application. With the proposal to control hours, again, is partly about kind of noise and disturbance later at night. So those are the kind of controls that we as a local planning authority can have over that side of the process. So my advice to committee is you don't need a representation from the police to come to a judgment about this particular planning application. We don't normally consult the police on applications of this nature. It's a fairly small scale application, and they tend either not to want to get involved in this, or wouldn't comment if we actually kind of did consult them. We have a protocol in place with them that we consult them on applications over a certain size, generating certain numbers of movements, etc. And this falls well below that threshold.
I think with regards to any historic concerns, particularly if they haven't been reported in, there's nothing to indicate that's got anything to do with the current applicant. So I'm concerned that we're, at risk of attaching a reputation to an applicant and a premises that is unwarranted.
Just so I did say allegations.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Giles. Okay, so moving on to debate. Who would like to speak? Councillor Fox, and then I saw Councillor Day indicate as well. Thank you.
Yeah, this is one of those applications that we so often find ourselves in planning committee where, we've heard some really passionate objections from residents, which I can well understand, because you've shown evidence that clearly the parking restrictions aren't being adhered to in your area, and you've indicated that there is a lot of antisocial behaviour. We know that there's a lot of antisocial behaviour in the area. Unfortunately, we can only base our assessment on material planning concerns, and it's my understanding that the hours are now going to be restricted where there's previously been no hours restricted. The car parking situation, hasn't really changed because cars would already be parking there for a restaurant. So yeah, while I think all of us always want to vote with what residents would like, and we want planning laws that allow us to help residents shape communities the way they want their communities shaped. Unfortunately, planning law isn't at that stage at the moment, and so I can't see any material reason not to vote this through. So yeah, I'll be voting in favour of the application, while I completely understand residents' concerns and wish that it was in our gift to do something about that in planning.
Councillor Day.
Hi, genuine question here. I mean, looking at all the other takeaways, etc., around the area, and I know we're not talking about them, but do we really need another one?
On debate rather than.
Oh, sorry.
Like, rhetorical question, fine. I think that
Yeah, it
can
is a
take part of the
question,
discussion.
Genuine question. Thank you.
You can make it as a
Oh, well, it is a point then, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we've got a lot in the area at the moment, yeah? So just asking the question, or the point that, does it really need another one?
And the question of need is not one for this committee. It's down for the for the market to actually determine how many takeaways a particular area can accommodate. Cumulative impact is an issue, but whether or not we need another takeaway is not, per se, a planning matter.
I have Councillor Hampton next, and then Councillor Sell, and then Councillor Kane.
Yeah, I would mirror a lot of what Councillor Fox has said. As ever, there's pros and cons. There certainly is both for this application, but we've got to balance and taking into account only those things that are material. As we've heard, or residents spoke very passionately, some of the things that are naturally of concern, like we've just heard, a number of takeaways is just not something we can take into consideration. I think the clear overriding kind of issue around this is, to me, about the parking pressures and existing traffic issues in the area, but we've heard that under its current use, Class C could be a cafe. You would arguably get even greater sort of additional pressure from that use. Theoretically, the business could go in that direction. So what we're looking at here is going to have an impact, and that's always going to be really difficult. But some of the other issues we heard around sound and smell, there are conditions in place to mitigate that, as has been discussed. We're probably never a kind of zero level, but as much as reasonably can be mitigated. So as ever, it is a difficult one, and we can sympathise with some of the issues residents may face, but I do think that as far as possible, right conditions and right sort of elements have gone into this to mean I will ultimately support it today.
Thank you, Councillor Sell.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to say the same thing and echo Councillor Fox and now Councillor Hampton. Unfortunately, we've heard really, really passionate objections today, and I'm not completely convinced that the change of use is going to have no impact on road safety. But the reality is here in this committee that we're considering the change of use from the Class C, which is general commercial, to a hot food takeaway, and the existing use might already encompass much of the proposed use. I think that it's just not within our gift to be able to determine what kind of commercial business operates here. So I think that it's more relevant for what we can do here as a committee to add potentially to the condition that says a condition of details of mechanical extraction, to add conditions that there will be odour filtration, silencers, and restrictions of hours of use. Unfortunately, I know that the existing parking situation in the area is going to mean that the impact of the change of use and road safety is increased, but ultimately, considering that we're considering the change of use, that's not something that we can reject the application based on. That's what I think. It's a bit sad.
Thank you, and Councillor Kane.
Yeah, I think I'm probably just echoing what the previous three councillors have said. As I know some of us have discussed quite a lot before, this is one of the pains of being on planning. We can't vote based on the people in the local community don't want this. It has to be a material reason. I take the parking issues seriously. But this is, if this had been a planned changing of a residential property into a takeaway. I don't know that it would have got this far, and if it had, I would have had material reasons to vote against it. It's not. It's a category E into a takeaway, which potentially could because another category E could just move in without having to change the use and exacerbate the parking situation even further than a takeaway would. So it is with those material reasons, and I'd also like to echo what Councillor Searle said. You know, as you said at the beginning, Chair, if we do not have those material reasons, this can just be taken to appeal, and then it will go through without our conditions. So the best thing we can do is make sure that those proposed conditions go on to this. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Fox?
Sorry.
Councillor Giles first.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say to the residents, like, that those issues that you raised, they are like super important, and this committee might not be able to tackle those in terms of this application, but with those photos that you have of cars parked on double yellow lines, please report those to the police. And if you're not getting like if they're not then being taken seriously, if enforcement isn't happening, then please do let councillors know that enforcement isn't happening, so that we can chase that up, because those things, you know, we do take those things seriously. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, we can't have any comments from the public at this stage. Thank you. I need you to stop now. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can just finish the point. Planning law restricts what we can do here, and we have to act within that planning law, but we do take that seriously. That's at government level, I'm afraid.
Any so Councillor Giles, comments from members? I'm going to need to express. There are places to express those concerns and get support, and I'd encourage people to use official channels and also enlist the support of their ward councillors too, where you feel things haven't been addressed in the way that you would like them to be. Thank you. So I have, I believe Councillor Fox made her point, so we have Councillor Giles. Thank you.
Thank you. It is finally balanced for me, because it is a change of use application from a cafe to a takeaway, rather than from a residential to a takeaway. Nonetheless, I am on balance minded to vote against the application. I will give my reasons, and I expect I'll be in the minority anyhow. Firstly, in relation to DM 24.2, I don't believe as a freestanding hot food takeaway it would be sustainable development, because of the residential nature of the area outside of an existing defined centre, due to the lack of parking provision and highway safety. And while there is currently the cafe usage, I think the change of use to takeaway will align the parking demand for the premises for when the car parking demand is highest for residents, as it operates when people primarily get home from work and in the evenings. Secondly, in relation to DM 24.3, I think the change of use is unsuitable due to the propensity for the change of use to put pressure on off-street parking in the area, and read alongside DM2, provide increased disturbance to amenity from those congregating outside the premises, the takeaway, picking up deliveries and collecting takeaways in the evening. In relation to the retrospective element concerning the decking, I am concerned that the decking has reduced car parking provision further, and I am concerned that the pressure to fit one car, multiple bikes and mopeds and the bin store in front of the barber shop will put pressure on that bus stop area directly in front of the premises on a narrow road. So I do think in relation to DM24B that the decking is detrimental to highway and pedestrian safety. Finally, with due regards to Section 17 of the Police and Disorder Act 1998, I'm concerned about the evidence in allegations from residents of persistent incidents of crime, disorder and drug-related incidents associated with the current premises. And while I fully appreciate that we're looking at the land use rather than the individuals involved, I think the proposed change of use to takeaway and the associated late opening hours to 11 o'clock associated with the nature of that premises compared to a cafe intensify the possibility of congregation and such activity in and around the premises. And I think that has the potential to cause harm to community safety and neighbouring amenity to an unacceptable level. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Giles. And then I had Councillor Zelle-Porte, I think, finally.
Yeah, as a lot of other councillors have said, there are many things that people have spoken about today, many concerns that residents have brought. Some of them are things that we can't take as material planning considerations. Some of them are things that we can, and that has left me feeling quite conflicted. The sheer number of people that have come today to oppose this makes me realise how passionate people feel about this, and taking that into account with the objections taken, but also taking into account the planning application as it stands, I really can't decide, so I will be abstaining. Thank you.
If there are no more points, then oh, sorry, Councillor Stannard.
Yeah, I think it's important to explain how we vote, and I'll echo what a lot of my colleagues have said, which clearly there's a great deal of passion and a great deal of local concern about this proposal, and I completely understand, empathise with that. Throughout this debate, of course, I've been listening for material issues which we can take into account when making our decision. And clearly, sometimes some of the objections that local communities make are not material to the planning process. And this is something which happens from time to time because we are constrained. I think I've heard enough to be able to decide on balance that those material issues have been addressed and mitigated insofar as we have any control. And I would just go back to Councillor Kane's point, which is, if we genuinely believe that that this should be passed today, if we were to vote not to pass it because of the strength of feeling amongst the community, there would be an appeal, and then a decision would be imposed, which would not include the conditions that we are placing on our decision, and we'd be in a much worse position. And I think councils which have ignored planning law in the past have come to regret it when there have been appeals, and they've ended up with a worse decision than they might otherwise have got. So I think it's important that we remember that. That's the position we're in. So I'm content to vote in favour of this today.
Thank you. And finally,
Councillor Giles made some excellent points, and one of those, like a question arose as a result of the debate. I know that we're on to the debate for clarity, I just wondered whether we have to take the retrospective and the planning for the change of use as one, because the retrospective planning for the Deccan does occupy potential parking spaces, which might alleviate some of those things. I know we've moved on from questions, so.
So you could make a proposal, however. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, you need to determine the application that's put before you, so that includes the retrospective decking.
Thank you for clarity.
Can I appropriately comment on something that was raised earlier to do with traffic management, which is that if the decking wasn't there, there'd be more car parking space outside the front, which is cars potentially crossing over the traffic. Right, so if there's no further debate points from members. Sorry.
That's okay.
The proposal.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, well, can I guess first I just want to say that I do actually agree with a lot of what Councillor Giles has said, and those are my concerns as well. And if this was a change of use from a residential to a commercial or residential to a takeaway, then those are the reasons that I might choose to vote against it. But unfortunately, like in this case, the general commercial use case already encompasses a lot of those things. So what I think that we should be doing, this is my formal proposal, and I'd be content to vote in favour if we were able to propose this. Can we please add to the conditions, as well as the details of the extraction system, can we have conditions on the odour reduction, on the silencer, and on the operational hours?
All of those points are proposed to be addressed within that condition. It's just kind of summary, but that can be noted in the minutes, so we can make sure that.
Thank you. Sorry, I should have asked.
I don't think that's what I meant. I think they should.
Okay, so if I can draw your attention to page 16, we have the recommendation which I'd like to propose to the committee, which is to approve application 26/00264/F at 37 Plumstead Road, and grant planning permission subject to the following conditions, of which there are 7. Which is the standard time limit in accordance with the plan submitted, the details of the mechanical extraction system, the restriction of opening hours from 7 AM till 11 PM, no tables, chairs, shelters or other seating to be placed on the decking, the bin for customer use installed and retained externally, and cycle parking installed prior to first use. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Kane, thank you. Okay, so we'll move to the vote. So will all those in favour please indicate?
Yep, so that is a recorded vote, so I'll call your names. So that's Councillors Oliver, Kane, Driver, Fox, Hampton, Haynes, Searle and Stannard.
And all those voting against, please?
That's Councillors Day and Councillors Giles.
And any abstentions, please?
That's Councillor Delacorte. So that, with a majority voting in favour, that's been approved.
That's approved with a majority voting in favour. We're going to take a 10-minute break. Thank you.
Chair, how long are we breaking for?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this application is to determine reference 26/00368 VC, which is a variation of condition from previous consent to extend operating hours on the site. I'd first just like to draw your attention to the updates report, relevant to point out one of the layout plans on page 36 of the agenda packs. I'd like members to disregard this plan as it shows an older arrangement of the site, both in terms of its entry and exit with the building and parking arrangements to the rear. This won't form part of the approved plans and it shouldn't be part of the consideration of this. Thank you. And another point on the updates report as well, we have had further letters of representation that disputed claims within the report, paragraphs 28, 31 and 34, primarily in regard to the licensing application, which resulted in the change of proposed hours from closure at 9 p.m. on a Sunday that was originally proposed to 7 p.m. The resulting change was from negotiations that took place within the licensing committee, but a letter of representation wanted to make it clear that this was not still wholly accepted by the majority of residents. Okay, so these sites. So this is located south of the roads Brackendale and the street within the Trowse area at south east side of the city. It is south of Trowse pumping station, which you can see in the top corner of this image, and the River Yar to the right hand side here. It's a sensitive site, and that is very made clear in the report, with proximity to residential properties which are listed as such: Trowse House Cottages, which are locally listed properties, the Coach House, Trowse House, it's a bungalow, Trowse House and the bungalow, apologies, which are grade 2 listed. Further to the south, Mill House, which is grade 2 listed, and Mill House Cottage, locally listed. All these properties and areas to the south and east are within the Trowse Millgate Conservation Area. Part of the conservation area also extends into the site entrance. However, the majority of the proposed site, the site proposed for the application is not in the conservation area. So these are some images of the site taken from the bridge above on Brackendale. So this shows the site entrance below as people would enter underneath where this image was taken. And in the images, you can see Trowse House, Cottages and the old Coach House on the image to the right hand side. So you can see the proximity between the sites there. The red building pictured as a storeroom, and the brewery is the main building to the right hand side. And then to the rear area is the main outdoor seating area for the tap room. And this image just shows another angle, again showing the relationship between the site and adjacent residential properties. And again, more of the same relationship, just taken from within the site entrance. The image at the bottom is looking back toward the site entrance. So this next image shows to the rear Trowse House, and that garden shares the boundary with it's more of a kind of service area, as you can see from some of the materials stored. But to the rear of where the picture was taken is the main outdoor seating area and tent area. The house is set back approximately 15 meters from this boundary, but obviously the garden space is immediately to the other side of this wall. These images just show so that wall on the top image would be to your left, and then to your right the main seating area, both in the tent area and open seating. And from that same point, looking back toward the brewery site, the entrance and the storeroom as pictured here. This gap between the fence on the left and the wall on the right, that's approximately 10 meters for context. And then this aerial view of the site shows those relationships as I've discussed in each area of the image. So to the left-hand side here, the bridge where the first photos were taken, showing the relationship with the first properties. Mill House to the rear, so I may be getting the names mixed up, and the main seating area and small car park area, and then in this corner, the main brewery and tap room. So I'd just like to, this is an additional slide that may not have been circulated previously. I'd just like to bring it to members' attention. This relates to condition 2, as listed in the recommendation, which which states for a management plan in accordance with application 20/0081D to be maintained in the agreement of the lifetime of the development. This does show it is a management plan and showed where seating areas should be encouraged. So this wanted to be shown for context. This may not be being adhered to at the moment, however, that's not relevant to the consideration of this application if the condition is in place, and any non-compliance can be looked at through enforcement routes. So in summary there have been 10 letters of objection plus 2 additional ones following the circulation of the agenda, primarily related to the creep of the site from being what was primarily an industrial brewing use with ancillary tap room that's over time grown into more frequent use as a pub drinking establishment, in addition to the associated noise impacts with that. Just to go through some of the recommended conditions. So in accordance with the plans, as I've stated, the management plan is approved in the 2020 reference to be implemented. Other means of addressing noise concerns that will still be carried on from previous consents: no loudspeaker, amplifier or audio equipment to be installed with on site, and the roller shutter of the doors to be kept closed at all times during the operation at the site as a drinking establishment. So multiple conditions that have been previously used on the site for previous consents that will be carried forward on this consent. The main condition that is being considered is the extension of opening hours. So this wants to add. So this wants to amend from 12 till 9 p.m. on a Friday, 12 till 9 p.m. on a Saturday, 12 till 5 on Sundays, or till 9 p.m. preceding a bank holiday Monday, 12 till 5 on a bank holiday Monday, and 12 till 9 on bank holidays on other days of the week. And this is to propose change to include Thursday openings from 12 till 9, 12 till 9 on a Friday and Saturday as existing, 12 till 7, so a 2-hour increase on a Sunday as proposed. And in addition, to have 12 till 9 on, this is specific wording, any other day of the week, which would be Mondays, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, when Norwich City Football Club men's first team or women's first team home games are taking place, which would be at Carrow Road. So the application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions as discussed. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I ask Sean Cohen to speak in objection, and you have 3 minutes. Are you?
Sorry, what was your name? Okay.
Just 1 second. Can I clarify? Are you? Would you be asking to speak Sean's words as well as your own, or is it one speech representing? That's fine, thank you.
Hello. The original license, this is from Dinah John. The original license granted to Redwell in the spirit of being a local brewery with a taproom bar attached. Dinah's lived in the property for over 40 years, by the way, has in effect morphed over time into allowing it to become a virtually full-time pub with a large beer garden immediately beside our property, currently including a huge marquee within about 10 feet of the wire netting of our garden fence. The noise nuisance at its worst makes it impossible to enjoy the basic amenities of our homes, both in the rooms to the rear of the house and in our garden. The idea of relaxing and reading a book on a sunny afternoon is out of the question. It's a huge relief when Redwell closes and the noise subsides. Please limit Sunday closing time to 5 p.m. and don't extend any of the current days or hours to accommodate the Carrow Road football matches. So that was Dinah John. Sean Cohen, I reiterate my objections to the application from Dinah. Redwell Beer Garden intrudes on the peace and privacy of the rear rooms of the property and on our garden, prohibiting the amenity of these areas due to noise being a real disturbance as it carries into our garden and the rear rooms of the property, prohibiting rest and relaxation. For example, one of my affected rooms is my bedroom, which is affected during setup, opening hours and shutdown. And number 2, direct lines of sight from customer areas into the rooms of the property. I'll go on to mine, and then there's a further bit from Sean if I get time. So I sent in a letter and I raised no objection to Thursday opening. I also am not objecting to the openings for Carrow Road games. I would like to limit to 5 p.m. on a Sunday, and also preempting something that was brought up, which I think may be brought up, that was brought up in licensing about it being a community space. I think we need to be a bit careful on that because not everyone in the community drinks. Not everyone who drinks wants to drink in a pub or can afford to drink in a pub. And of those people who can, not everybody drinks real ale. And I actually looked this up, which was the figures were about 6 to 8% from the CGA who gather data on point of sale. So with this in mind, I'm a bit concerned about 2 things. First of all, that going forward, if we don't restrict it now, there'll be a further request, because there's already been a request due to not being able to make enough money, that we'll be asked to make further sacrifices in order to allow profits to be made by the company next door. And if it is successful and there aren't enough people from Trowse, we'll be bringing people from other parts of the city. Therefore, again, if we're thinking about being a community service, it's not a service for our community, it's a service for the rest of Norwich coming in. The only other thing I would like to ask is that could we be really clear about if people do bring in personal speakers, using them in the garden and sometimes having karaoke alongside, that they will be ejected or their speakers will be taken away from them. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you. And could I ask Libby Perrier to speak in objection? And you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody, for your attention. My name is Libby. I'm a florist. I've been at large in NR1 for about 50 years, and I have owned and run several small businesses, and I'm no enemy of entrepreneurship, and I think everyone should have the right to make a living. But don't be fooled by my granny glasses and this resume, because actually I'm youthful enough to have 4 children under the age of 16. 2 of them are primary school age, and I'm campaigning for a shutdown at 7 p.m. on a Thursday and 5 p.m. on a Sunday. And I don't think that the bar needs to be open any later than 7:30 on match days either, in order to garner the relevant football trade, because otherwise their bedrooms, as you can see from the plan, I live in the old coach house, and we're directly adjacent to the beer garden, and all the bedroom windows are no more than 15 metres away and directly overlook the space, and the chatter can still be heard even through closed windows, and who has their windows closed, you know, anymore these days. So I'm also, as I said, a florist, so I occasionally need an early night for all those early mornings, and we chose the house because it was so quiet when we bought it in 2015. Also, my husband's a academic neuroscience and a qualified sound engineer, and one of his most cited papers is based on sound recordings of birdsong recorded at dusk, and when the tap room was closed, not when it was open. So he also has some pretty good recordings of instances when the roller shutter has been up instead of down, as mandated, and of amplified sound, which is also a contravention of the current licence. And although, you know, he and I enjoy a glass of beer as much as the next person, we do appreciate having the brewery next door with its current limited opening times. But I don't want to have to be responsible for policing the racket upwards of 4 nights a week, which is what the proposal would entail, when my children should already be tucked up in bed and able to sleep. Okay for the chatter in the garden, you know, less excited about the cheery shouts of jolly patrons as they wait for their cab, because the road is on the direct level with our bedroom windows. I just don't think we should have to put up with that to the detriment of our children's sleep and, you know, our chosen careers. So currently the mill pond and the mill gate, I think, is a community asset. We already have 2 or 3 other beer selling establishments within half a mile. So there's no real sort of need or, you know, for this amenity. And I suggest that the proposed extension to trading hours are disruptive and could be reined in. So in conclusion, it's a great place for a brewery, a nice place for an ancillary tap room, not suitable for a fully fledged hospitality establishment because it comes at too great a cost to our residential environment and to my children's well-being. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I ask Marion Catlin to speak in objection? And you also have 3 minutes.
Put my timer on, hold on, so I don't run over. There we go. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've been a resident in one of the houses that directly abut more or less where the entrance is, and was part of the, if you like, objections to the original planning application to turn this from primarily a brewery with light industrial use to the ability to serve the public on site. Over the time that change, I mean, when it was first a brewery, it had very little impact on us because it was contained during the working week. As time has gone on, I believe the applicant Sam has said that the balance of brewery to hospitality has gone from 25% wholesale brewing to 75% hospitality. So we, you know, there are various conditions that were added to the previous planning permission, which Lara there was very much a part of. They've worked very well, and we're now able to, you know, coexist quite happily. But as a couple of my neighbours have said, you know, it works as it is. We're very wary of extensions by gradual increment because we're aware that this application in itself seems very minor. It's a couple of hours here and a bit more there and a bit more there. But overall, the activity on site has
considerably increased. And what the photos didn't particularly show was the extent of the beer garden. It's 3 large marquees. There's a bit of that area there. There's just a little tapered bit up at the end where there's a bit of car parking. And the reason that there's so many of us here is because we all experience the site in different ways, because it's a very long site that borders what was originally the orchard to Trouse House. Trouse House comprises 5 flats. Sorry, I'm feeding back a bit. Comprises 5 flats, and 2 or 3 of the residents live above ground level. So we're only a portion of the people here that are represented. Although there's a number of us, we have amassed our representation. So as well as the noise, it's not just the time that the brewery is open to the public, but it's all the ancillary activity that goes on over the weekend, which includes setting up, staff arrive on site quite early. There's sounds of people moving about. None of it is extreme, and we're not sitting here saying life is unbearable, which it was under the previous owners who, did operate in an unconditioned way. Life then was truly unbearable. Now we're not saying it's unbearable, but it is a constant noise that happens of activity all the time, which is why I think for a number of us, 5 o'clock closing on a Sunday is the time when it goes quiet. It's the one time during the week where the site goes quiet. So I think that I have reached my my limit here, but I think overall, just to sum up, I personally am not objecting to the extra day of opening, but I would prefer it to close at 7:30 on match days, because it's primarily to catch match day traffic and for pizzas and beer to who will then go to the match. So I don't see a reason for staying open later, and 5 o'clock on a Sunday, because that's when it really works for us to go quiet.
Speaking objection, you have 3 minutes.
Before I start, Planning Officer Armstrong Hickey did point out that at least one of those plans should be disregarded, but the one that's still showing, preceding this one, still shows the word works next door to us. We live in Trouse House Cottages, and the one next to that, it still has the word works. I can't read it from here, but I think that is where Libby lives and her family of young children. So just to clear that, sorry.
Thank you for raising that.
Okay.
So I'll start the timer.
Thank you. We often ignore the fact that the big roller shutter door is open during existing drinking times. This is contrary to the permitted conditions. The noise spills out over our backyard. It really does affect my amenity. I can't speak for my wife. Occasionally Marion complains and the shutter is closed, but complaining doesn't come easy to us. The outside area abutting our property is frequently occupied by punters and their children. At this present time, there are tables just over the fence. This area is 4 foot our ground level, and despite the wooden fence, the noise is intrusive and can be easily heard even inside our house with the doors and windows shut, not to mention in the backyard. This is not supposed to happen, but it does. But we don't like to complain. Please note that the southeast facing wall of the brewery building, which faces us, the old brick arch and the arch itself, and the rear horseshoe shape of Trouse House Cottages effectively create an echo chamber. I mention this to let the committee know that in existing conditions we are affected and therefore know what opening times do mean to us. I've not objected to the proposed increase of opening times related to Norwich City Football Club home first team matches, or to the proposed later opening time on Thursdays, despite knowing that my amenity will be affected by the additional serving time. I do object to the bar staying open later than 5 p.m. on Sunday evenings. Sunday evening is the one evening during which we can enjoy our backyard without the sense that we are being listened to and being disturbed by bar-related noise. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I ask Alex Sanders to speak in objection, please? And you also have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Hello, thanks for listening to me. I live at the bungalow with my partner Liz, who I'm speaking on behalf of as well. We live immediately beside the brewery's outdoor area. Our garden is on the other side of the wall. I support giving the business some additional flexibility. I can support Thursday opening and capped match day conditions, provided that new Monday to Thursday opening ends at 7 p.m. for the reasons, or 7:30 for the reasons that Libby's given you. My main request is that the existing Sunday condition remains unchanged. The proposal would change the ordinary pattern from 2 evenings and a Sunday afternoon to 4 consecutive opening days, including evenings. When you add in match days, based on the last 5 seasons, that's nearly 1 week in 4 of 5 opening days. Last August bank holiday would have seen a 6-day week. That's a big shift from the current pattern. But published hours also understate the effect. From our garden, we hear set up for 1 to 2 hours before the public arrive and activity for 1 to 2 hours after it closes. In our lived experience, the noise on Saturdays between 5 to 7 p.m. is louder than the preceding afternoon. The Sunday proposal is therefore not simply 2 additional hours. It moves disruptive noise into ordinary Sunday evenings, and that noise is likely to be louder than the preceding afternoon. With the Thursday change, it would leave us with no quiet evenings between Wednesdays and Mondays. The 2019 decision notice notes that the current hours are a deliberate mitigation, quote, to ensure that residential living conditions and local amenities are not adversely affected by unacceptable noise and disturbance under DM2 and DM11. They are not arbitrary starting point for later expansion if the business pivoted to hospitality, and they have balanced the needs of the business and the needs of the neighbours well. The report also notes that hospitality was acceptable while remaining secondary to brewing. The report also describes a quiet setting with homes only 2 or 3 metres away. It says the noise assessment did not cover people noise and that tightly worded conditions were needed. Nothing has changed and no new noise impact assessment has been submitted. The Jacks case referred to in the current report requires licensing evidence to be considered, but it does not require planning hours to match licensed hours, and the court left planning merits undecided. Licensing can respond if harm occurs, but the report accepts that planning cannot later take these hours back. We should not have to experience and prove harm to recover an existing protection without new evidence showing it's no longer needed. And to refer to something already previously, finally, the licensing change from 7 p.m. to 7 p.m. on Sundays was not a compromise agreed to by the residents. Only 3 residents even knew about the proposals. All 3 of them attended the licensing committee meeting. 2 of them opposed, while a third made a qualified suggestion of 7 p.m. and said more affected neighbours should be heard. These changes do not represent the views of neighbours and should not be interpreted as such. So I ask you to retain the existing Sunday condition, limit any new Monday to Thursday customer opening to 7 p.m. or 7:30 on match days. That gives, I think, the business a useful additional flexibility while preserving the most important existing protection for us, its immediate neighbours. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And can I ask Sam Brown to speak as the applicant now, please? And you have 6 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I probably won't take 6 minutes. I've said from the start of this whole process, the ball started rolling in February. I'm a Norwich boy, born and bred. I'm very much not doing this out of greed. You know, every business needs to make a profit. That is just the world that we live in. Red Bull Brewery does not make masses of profits. My whole idea of this is to continue its viability, not for the next 1-2 years, for the next 10 years. My employment costs have exponentially grown. My utility bills have exponentially grown. And with the increase in business rates, taxes, for me, I'm pivoting the business and trying to literally keep it viable. And it's not necessarily obviously my livelihood. You know, the brewery site employs 40 people, indirectly times that again by 5. You know, the hundreds of stakeholders that we purchase products from. And I've been very diplomatic, I feel, with the request for the hours. At not one point have I put in an application to open past 9 o'clock. The 2 drinking establishments in Trouse, I believe, are both open past 11:30, and appreciate that that's 2 out of 3 drinking establishments, and potentially I could put an application to extend past 9 o'clock. But we want to be there for, like I say, the next 10-20 years, and with that means keeping the local neighbours, community happy. But for me, my businesses are my babies, and I have to fight for their viability, but also accommodating the local area, which I do feel I have been very diplomatic in doing. The whole point of, you know, the opening on the Norwich City home matches, that's literally just to pick up passing trade that walks past our door every single week, and I can't benefit from it. I have to literally, you know, stop people coming to the gate and, you know, we're not open, I'm really sorry, we're not open. The Trouse car park, which I feel was a brilliant idea, that was incepted in a couple of years ago. That brings a massive amount of cars to the area to watch the football. That also alleviates, in my mind, a lot of the issues that Trouse has had with people parking very rogue for football days. So all I want is to take, for example, 1 in every 5 people that walks past on a Tuesday to come into the brewery, which they most likely already do on a Saturday. So for me, the increase in the weekdays, that's just a rinse and repeat. I did originally ask for 9 o'clock with the licensing, got obviously approved, and I sacrificed 2 hours to go back to 7 o'clock, which I feel was quite reasonable. And also with that, we could open actually on a bank holiday, the Sunday before a bank holiday, till 9 o'clock. So effectively, we did have provisions open until 9 o'clock, which we have done, which we didn't have any direct complaints with those days that were specifically open on those times. So I feel quite a goodwill gesture, in my point of view, that it is actually generally sacrificing the potential to open 5 bank holidays until 9 o'clock to go, actually, no, let's meet in the middle and do it until 7. A lot of the customers on site, they feel very shortchanged and having to leave at 5 o'clock on a Sunday. And that 2 hours is, for me, just an extension of the current crowd that we have there, and is a big earning potential for the site with, I think, overall minimal grand impact in the grand scheme of things. It's not a pub, it's a brewery with a tap room. There's no real stipulation and guidance in terms of when it does then become a pub. You know, that place is very much a tap room. Also, we have to make the beer that we sell in our tap room. So we have to actually have days where we allocate for commercial brewing processes, which means we would never want to open 7 days a week. Obviously, pubs are really, really struggling. Yeah. Pubs have to buy beer from breweries. Yeah. I have a brewery, I make my own beer. That is probably the only reason why the place is still standing. And just to go back to some of the objections about being, you know, a pub and a drinking establishment, throughout the winter, we put a kids' activity day on in the marquees every Sunday for the kids, charge them £1 to come to it. And that's where I'm very different in terms of being a pub, and I will, as I said, I will fight for that purpose. We serve local gins, local vodkas. We've got on-trend ciders, on-trend cocktail drinks. We've got local soft drink suppliers. We've got East Norfolk cider. We've got all of their range of apple juice, raspberry juice for the kids. It's very much a family establishment, and also I'm a Norwich boy born and bred. My community is Norwich, not a particular demographic of favour or where I have or do live or previously lived. I'm a Norwich boy born and bred. I want to support the whole community of Norwich and invite them to come to an amazing place that will still be there and also being able to reinvest in itself, improve its facilities, improve its brewing equipment. Everyone knows hospitality margins, it just doesn't generate enough surplus profit to invest in, you know, new equipment. Everyone see, within the Norwich City District, I have other businesses in Borden District Council, etc. Possible for match funding is, you know, very easy, you know, government grants, whereas Norwich City, we don't get that benefit of the funding stream, so therefore I have to self-invest and generate surplus to buy things that need to be replaced. Last week I replaced my cooling system in my chiller. That was £4,000.
Sorry, we've gone well over 6 minutes now.
Okay,
so
thank you.
Thank you very much then. Do members have any questions on the report, please? Councillor Delacorte and then Councillor Hampton.
I suppose hearing the residents and hearing the applicant, this might seem like a silly question, but it sounds as if a lot of the grievances are coming from the noise that's generated from people sitting outside. So would there be any possibility to have a condition where, say, on Sundays from 5 p.m, everyone needs to go inside the premises? Would that help reduce the noise levels?
That would be possible, and that would be something that the committee could ask for. I think it's probably worth going into the interface with licensing, just to give the committee a bit more of a steer on that. So as alluded to in the report, the license has been varied to the hours that we are recommending in the planning condition as well. So the proposal is for the licensing hours and the planning hours to match. The fact that a license has been granted for those hours is a material planning consideration and is something that we need to bear in mind when we're making our decision, because it has already gone through a process and that was deemed acceptable through that process. And we need to have a clear reason to make a different decision under planning, to differ those hours from those approved licensing hours. It's also worth noting that a license can be varied, whereas the planning conditions, once we grant these extended, if we were to grant these extended opening hours, we wouldn't have the ability to go and change that, whereas license can be varied should there be complaints from residents down the line.
I'll just come back on that chat. So I suppose my question was to not necessarily change the opening hours. So, for example, keeping the pub open until 7 p.m. on Sunday, but having it so that by 5 p.m. all drinks must be taken inside and the shutters must be closed as per the current conditions. That seems like it would probably alleviate a lot of the current concerns around noise and people not being able to enjoy their gardens, and that was just one of the things that popped into my head.
Yeah, yes, that would be possible. That would be possible. There are, as I understand it, there is a small amount of seating inside the building. There is more seating outside, so it would be up to the pub to manage that. If there were a lot of people outside at 5 o'clock on a Sunday, and then they were all told to go inside, it's quite possible that there wouldn't be space for them. So that might be a condition that is difficult for them to implement, but that would be something down to their management to deal with.
Thank you. Councillor Hampton.
Thank you. I think a lot of what I was going to ask has sort of been covered by what Lara said about that interface with licensing, in that when we first read the report, there was a account of how that meeting went, and from the updates to report, that's been disputed. I think from what residents have said today, and it sounds like there's possibly more representations than licensing had, I think it's fairly clear what at least residents would want the outcome to be, or how they consider the impacts to amenity could be mitigated. But this doesn't feel like the best forum to necessarily do further alterations, and what you just said about licensing having to carry some weight because that went through a process. So firstly, I think my question is it effectively not recommended that we do seek further changes to the hours, or if we did feel that as a committee that would be necessary for it to be acceptable for us, what process would that go through? It feels more like a sort of licensing process, and just this forum, obviously we can't go back to residents and applicant and do a sort of negotiation, I suppose. So if that was something that was weighing really heavily with us as something that did need work theoretically, what would happen next?
It is entirely within the committee's gift to grant different hours than the licence. It's not that your hands are tied in that regard. It's just that we need, as decision makers, to have in mind it went through a process in licensing and that was deemed acceptable, and that variation to the premises licence was granted. Why at this point in time, and on what basis are we making a different decision? That's the question that we'd need to ask ourselves, or you'd need to ask yourselves, and that would need to be recorded in the minutes for us to have a robust decision.
Yeah, if I can, excuse me, if I can just add to that. The case that's cited in the committee report at paragraph 32, I think a lot has been made about that case changing things. I don't think it necessarily changes things, but it clarifies things. And as Lara has said, that if you're going to make a decision that's different from another regulatory process, which has effectively similar controls, you need to be able to articulate why you, as a decision-making body, don't think there's enough control in that other process. The licensing process is much more focused. It's not focused necessarily on the land use, and also from our point of view as the planning authority, that land use has already been established. This is more about how that land use operates, and we've obviously it's complicated by the fact that sometimes the two processes don't always align. You can get a planning application before you get the licensing. You can get the licensing before you get the planning application. So sometimes you're kind of making a decision on a planning application kind of in the dark, and you have to kind of consider conditions like opening hours at that point in time with no knowledge of how the licensing process is going to go. This is different from that. We've got an established use which wants to change its hours. It's been through the licensing process, so we have to have regard to that. But again, as Lara says, they are two very distinct processes. One of the main differences is that the licensing process is very much focused on the individual business. The planning process, we do have a slightly wider remit. We can look at things like the cumulative impact of different uses, different licensable activities. I don't think this is necessarily material in this instance, because it's the impact the residents are experiencing is from this particular activity. So where am I going with this? Yeah, basically, I'm trying to make the point that you're not fettered, you're not restricted by the licensing decision, but you have to have regard to it and be able to articulate why you don't agree with it. But the final point I was going to make, that the licensing process is much easier to review. Residents can kind of make a complaint to the licensing authority. They can remove the license from the individual, and it's also specific to an individual. And they can vary it much more easily than we can.
But to clarify, in order to review the licence, there would need to be extra information, presumably presented, to indicate that the decision that was made at the previous licensing committee shouldn't hold. Like, you wouldn't take it back with the same information that was presented to the committee at the time, expecting a different answer. Is that correct?
Sometimes, I mean, because licenses are individual, the license holder can be, to be quite blunt, they don't do what they said they were going to do when they got the original license. So the licensing committee can then review that decision, and they can say, well, actually, we're either going to take your license away, or we're going to kind of revert it back to original hours. So they have much more flexibility, and it's yeah, to review the process.
Thank you. I have Councillor Kane next, Councillor Fox, and then Councillor Stannard after that.
Thanks. I had a few questions come up, hopefully quite quickly, based on some things the officers and Councillor Delacorte said. I'll try to limit myself for now and then come back if necessary, if things haven't been answered. So this one is sort of just a hypothetical, I suppose. When you were talking about the putting it inside, limiting the hours inside after 5, for example, on a Sunday. I'm aware that some pubs in Norwich do a limited garden area. For example, the Coach and Horses on Bethel Street, right? After a certain hour, you have to come into the undercovered area. I wondered if that was something we could possibly implement, and B, if it would be at all beneficial in any way, or if that would just be on this site because of the way the residences are encircling, I think, just not really of any benefit. The second one was just to do with just clarifying that thing with licensing. So I know it's been clarified a lot now, sorry, but I just want to get it clear in my head. So it's within licensing's remit. So if for example, there are multiple complaints and those shutter doors aren't being shut and people are coming in and playing music on speakers, which I assume they're not meant to do, and things like that, that can then go back to licensing. So that's an area we can look at. There was a third question based on something David said, and I've completely forgotten it. So I'll leave it at those two and and come back if I remember it.
Thank you. And so I had Councillor Fox next, and then, oh, sorry.
Can I just come back on your second question first of all? Sorry, because that's fresh in my head. So yes, licensing could review that. Things like speakers or kind of activities on site. It is also within the specific planning conditions as well. So that does open up the planning enforcement route to review those. So then we can look to enforce on those conditions. So condition 6 that's proposed, that is already part of the Act of Consent. The roller shutters should be kept closed at all times during the operation of the use of the drinking establishment. That is a condition that has to be complied with, and in a non-compliance, we can look down enforcement route. I don't know if that is specific to the license. It may not be specific to the license, but it is control with planning. Likewise, condition 5 in planning, no loudspeaker amplifier or audio equipment shall be installed or used on the site. So in our interpretation of that condition, that doesn't necessarily specify used on site by the applicant or operator, just as it's used on site. So if there is a use on site, then yes, that would be in breach of planning, and again, enforcement action could be taken. The last other control that we also have, condition 2, the management plan that was approved in application with a 20 reference. I'm going to read specifically from that management plan that is conditioned: half-hour walk around the areas of the tap room, including beer garden and outside spaces, to ensure that customers are acting responsibly, etc. So there are 3 conditions there that are controlled with planning to control such elements, and it is for the applicant to ensure that those are adhered to.
Yeah, so, I think, Matthew, we wanted to respond to something.
Sorry, I was feeling a bit overheated.
The difficulty with your proposal about limiting the area of the outside space that would be able to be used during certain hours is that we don't have, at this point in time, we don't have a clear plan that would sort of lay that out. We wouldn't have anything to tie that back to. That is the sort of condition that would more likely be imposed by licensing. So that might be something to consider through that route.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my question was, so obviously the residents are concerned about noise. I wondered if there are measures that we could put in as conditions that could help to mitigate for that. For example, like hedgerows in planters, like you can damp down noise. And are there any other things that we can do we can put in place as conditions that would help alleviate the noise?
Well, I think one thing that was done at previous conditions was the installation of an acoustic fence installed on this area. If you can see where my cursor is, where there's a bit of a blue covering to the left-hand side of that red storage room, there were additional changes to that to address that. Yeah, okay, and also this one to the side of the seating area. So those measures were put in place at the time of the 2019 reference in lieu of that. In addition, the management plan that I alluded to earlier, which is condition for adherence, is that no seating should be occurred here. I'll take you back to this screen. So this was an image within that management plan. And this area of the left-hand side picture, that is that area that is directly behind the fence and previous hedging. I believe that fence will have now been replaced with a proper acoustic fence. So it is again for the applicant to be adhering to this management plan and not have seating in that area, directing customers to the other area.
No, I'm sorry that, so I think people might well share frustration with the process. I mean, it sounds ideal to me if things happens in a different order. But it's actually, if Matthew could share something.
We have actually got this.
We're sorry, I can't make any more comments from public,
But just for the benefit of members, that is what is summarised in the updates report that I summarised at the start of the presentation.
Councillor Senard.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm not an expert on licensing. I've never sat on licensing committee, although I've sat on planning, obviously. But it seems to me that we are able to look at amenity. I don't think licensing does. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm going to suggest that is a way that if we wanted to, we could make a different decision, because we're looking at a different aspect of the matter. And it strikes me it wouldn't have to be very major changes. I mean, I have to say, I think the residents in their requests have been very measured and very reasonable. And you know, when I first saw this, I was actually quite shocked by how close this was to their rear rooms and rear gardens. And it's also not just obviously that the noise nuisances during the opening hours. We've heard that it's before and after. And who wouldn't want to have a nice quiet Sunday late afternoon, evening to enjoy your garden or to put your kids to bed? It doesn't seem to me to be that unreasonable. That would require a relatively small change in the opening hours for us to achieve that. And I think I'm going to suggest that amenity is the route by which we could do that. There's no reason why we have to agree with what licensing says if they're looking at completely different criteria.
I mean, licensing does look at the issues that, in terms of the impact upon individual properties that neighbours are raising. What planning does slightly differently, and that's what I was trying to get across earlier, it can look at the wider amenity of the area. So it can look at the cumulative impact of licensable properties. But in terms of this particular application, I would suggest that the issues that are being raised through the planning process are exactly the same as the ones being raised through the licensing process. So the licensing process has already taken those into account. So, well, from a process point of view, the two processes actually take in terms of this particular example, the issues addressed are exactly the same. So my advice is that whilst there's, sorry. Yeah, the amenity issue is a question of the wider amenity of the area, and that is something that we as planning authority can take into account. That is something that the licensing authority cannot take into account. However, in this instance, my advice to you is that the licensing, regardless of the number of people who were present or not, or who made representations, the licensing authority took into account the issues that we are considering today, and therefore they're pretty much they're the same issues. I don't know whether,
so
Jodie, are you in a position to advise on licensing?
Not licensing, I'm not a planning expert. What the officers has said is entirely correct in relation to the interplay between licensing and planning. It is within the committee's gift to make a different decision to that which has been made at licensing committee, but as officers have already advised you, you need to have a material consideration to deviate from that position. So the Jacks Bar case presumes that you will presume that unless you have information otherwise, that other statutory regimes will deal with the issues that are being raised. So unless you feel that the licensing does not deal with the issues that have been raised, then you'll need to find a consideration as to why you would reach a different decision to that which was raised in licensing.
And if I can just elaborate on that, if you look at the drawing, not the drawing, the photograph on the top, the issues that we're looking at are the impact on the properties to the top of that drawing as a result, photograph, as a result of the activity taking place on the site to the bottom of it. And those are precisely the issues that the licensing regime also takes into account.
Councillor Sonner, did you want to
Yeah, I mean, I'm confused. I mean, can we make a decision that's different to licensing or not? Okay, and or has this already been rubber stamped? So I'm finding that frustrating, particularly if this committee had taken place before licensing, then we'd have tied down licensing and restricted their ability to make a decision. I mean, this does feel a little bit bizarre, and it does feel a little bit like it's the sequence in which these meetings have taken place, which is giving us a problem, or it could have been licensing having the problem. I mean, I would argue, however, what I'm going to try and argue, that if we want to make a slightly different decision, and I'm not suggesting a massively different decision over the hours, sort of something fairly modest. Well, we have actually got access to information around amenity that licensing didn't have. We got all these people who've given us their statements, and I'd like to ask, is that additional information that licensing wasn't privy to, is that sufficient to support us making a slightly different decision?
I mean, I understand that it can sound a bit strange. I don't think licensing operates in precisely the same way as planning does, so I don't think they're beholden. I mean, we're not beholden to slavishly follow the licensing rules. It's just that we need to have a good reason for not doing so. Whether or not the presence of additional people at this meeting is additional information, my advice to you is that it's not, because the issues that are being raised are the same ones that licensing would have taken into consideration. But as I say, you are not absolutely bound by the licensing decision, but you just need to be able to articulate why you don't think licensing can actually control the situation on this particular site.
Shall we take some more questions and then we can revisit that point as we go on? So I think I have Councillor Delacorte, then Councillor Driver, and then Councillor Giles, if I accounted correctly.
May I suggest that obviously licensing have seen this application, they've made their decision and they've done it from obviously from a licensing point of view, but they've taken into consideration the things that they've had to and the things that we've had before us today, and they've deemed appropriate what they think. So we now can do what we deem appropriate using planning law. I think we're getting quite focused on what we can do from a licensing perspective, what we can and can't do. I think the thing we need to focus on is how can we make this appropriate and make sure that the applicant and the residents are happy, maybe by condition, by using the things that we have in our power as members of the planning committee. What can we do to make this bearable for both people instead of getting caught up? So I would quite like to see whether, for example, on the Sunday from 5 p.m, could all people at the pub have to go inside? Because I know you're saying that there's less space inside, but maybe that's not a bad thing, because then that would go from being tons of people outside making loads of noise to maybe a few less people inside the pub. The pub still makes money, they've still got customers, but then the residents can still have that peace and quiet, enjoy their back garden. It's kind of a win-win situation. But I think we need to be looking at it from a planning point of view and less from a licensing point of view.
Thank you. And next I have Councillor Driver. So did you, was that addressing the committee, or shall I wait for officers to respond to that? Okay, cool, thank you. So Councillor Driver.
Yeah, I would argue against make them go in at 5 o'clock. I think that'd be too hard to enforce. If you've got more people outside and you've got women inside, then you can end up with arguments, shouting, bawling and everything like that. I think the licensing done the right thing. I think they went in, they wanted to stay on to 9 o'clock. They brought it down to 7 o'clock, and that is saying what is coming here. So there's already a compromise here for the 2 hours anyway, which I think is a good thing for a Sunday. I don't think 7 o'clock is too early or too late. I think it's just about right for a place down there. I think it's being run well. The events they put on, I think, are run well. It's quiet down there as well, because if not, you would have a resident coming back to licensing for a review, and that is something they can use tomorrow, next week, the week after, whatever. If they break any of those rules, they can ask for a review and you have to give them one. So, and I don't believe we had any reviews come in for Red Wells since it's been open, and it's been open a long time now. So I believe that we should just pass this as it is and move on.
So we've moved on to discussion, really. It's approaching 1 o'clock, and I propose that we continue with this item rather than taking a break now. So I have Councillor Giles.
Thanks. I think it might be helpful in considering the discussion about potential conditioning to explain how DM2 on amenity is broader than the definition of public nuisance as per the Licensing Act 2003 objective. So what kinds of things might DM2 enable us to consider that the licensing committee could not consider as part of their public nuisance licensing objective?
Is that worth having a training session on that? Because if not, we'll be here all day.
Well, I think it's immediately relevant to the decision we make today.
But we need to give proper consideration. I think the trigger point at the review of the licence, which might be something residents want to consider, is if anything, if the applicant has a licence and isn't complying with it, that's the point at which it would be reviewed. But because the residents subsequently can't live with the terms of the licence, is that going to enable them to ask for it to be reviewed? And I suspect not. Anyway, planning question wise.
I mean, I've got the two definitions in front of me, but I'm conscious that, you know, some people on this panel committee haven't been licensing trained before, and I'm conscious that, you know, I mean, I haven't been on licensing committee for over 4 years.
I mean, my reading of DM2, I mean, it is a very wide-ranging policy, and it talks about a lot of things in terms of amenity. But I mean, it doesn't restrict you to the consideration of a statutory nuisance in terms of noise and disturbance, and I guess that is the key issue, that the bar is possibly slightly lower in terms of the levels of disturbance that you could potentially consider from an amenity point of view. But I think you would still need to be able to articulate why avoiding for example, a public nuisance would make a difference in terms of this particular assessment of this particular planning application. So you still be able to still need to be able to articulate what the material difference was between what licensing can control and what we can control. I mean, you're right. The Licensing Act does specifically refer to a nuisance, which has a very specific meaning. The Planning Acts do not refer specifically to a nuisance, so it doesn't have quite the same meaning, but you still need to be able to articulate why you wanted to make a different decision to the licensing process. What material effect does that does that difference between the two regimes have that might lead you to a different decision?
Councillor Giles.
Thanks. It's a follow-up. Sorry, thanks. The definition of public nuisance set out in Attorney General and PYA queries that any nuisance is public which materially affects the reasonable comfort and convenience of a life of a class of Her Majesty's subjects, or His Majesty's now. Not necessary to prove that every member of the class has been affected, only a representative cross-section. And then DM2, existing occupiers, C, particular regard to the prevention of disturbance from noise, odour, vibration, air or artificial light pollution. So I suppose the question I would be asking, if we were looking at a condition which licensing didn't impose in light of the Gateshead principle and the recent case law Jack's Bar, is what factors under that policy DM2 would we be restricting the opening hours that couldn't have been considered within the definition of public nuisance when applying the Licensing Act 2003, particularly given that licensing committee is significantly more flexible in terms of enforcement, having to get a license renewal, having to you know, the possibility of calling it in, etc., if it's deemed that the license is being applied with.
My advice to you, which I think I've previously said, is I don't think there is a material difference between the issues that licensing have been considering in this particular example and the issues that are before the planning application, before Planning Applications Committee. There's a different definition, but I think essentially we're talking about the same things.
So approval from the committee today would not preclude the ability of the neighbours or any other objectors to make subsequent representations to licensing and ask for a review dependent on you know how they experience the possible changes.
No, we wouldn't restrict licensing decision. I mean, the principle is that whatever's the most severe restriction is the one that applies.
Councillor Haynes.
Yeah,
I know we've had more representation here today from members of the public, from residents, but it doesn't seem like the things that have been said, though more people have said it here today, it doesn't seem like that's most my reading of what happened at the licensing committee. I wasn't there. It doesn't seem like they're substantially different either. The same, we've just heard more of them today, and like, while I think we should take residents' opinions into account, I don't think we can say they're substantially different. So I don't think we can say we'd necessarily have had a different opinion if they'd have come in the other order. All we can do is go based on what we've got on planning grounds, isn't it?
Can I just come back to that? So yes, I agree, and we would do the same in a planning context. You know, we would consider all the impacts from one application to another. Whether there'd been one letter of representation on one, we would consider the full impacts, as opposed to another application where there had been 20 objections. We would still consider the full impacts the same, and that can say the same for the two regimes between licensing and planning in this context.
Councillor Sell.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, so we have heard additional comments from opposers. Specifically, I mean, if we're considering under planning, if we're considering the impact of this application on the existing occupants, which is what it says under our policy, we've heard today that one of the existing occupants has young children who are impacted by the later opening hours. Surely that's material.
I think this kind of comes back to the a point that we were discussing with the previous application. It's not necessarily about the individuals, certainly from a planning point of view, it's not necessarily about the individuals who are currently occupying those premises, it's about the land use. So does it have an unreasonable impact upon the amenity of the residential use next door, rather than upon the individuals who happen to be occupying it at that point?
Okay, but a residential use might ordinarily have young people and children living there. So is that something that we can consider?
It's insofar as it represents a material impact upon the amenity of occupants, yes.
So if we move on to debate now, I feel like we've made some points that could come under the category of debate already. Is there anything else that anybody would like to add? In that case, I'm going to propose that we move to conclude, and I'm going to propose that we approve the application 26/00368/VC. Do I have in accordance with the conditions on page 31? Do we have a second?
I mean, is it possible to maybe make an amendment? Propose an amendment?
Yeah, we can do that. Sorry, I thought we'd sort of moved past that, but I did say I would come back. So let's do that first. Apologies.
I mean, as I say, I think the residents are being very reasonable in their response, and the questions that or the changes that they have asked for, and I think they've made their case very powerfully. I mean, the one thing that strikes me is the extension on Sundays, and I mean, I suppose match days as well. But I think we're talking about, I think what they're asking is for Sundays to have a closing time of 5 p.m. I think that's what they're asking for, and we try to find a way of resolving that. You know, taking people inside, blah 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 blah, moving people to another area, etc. I don't think that's going to work. So I'd like to propose that we amend the proposal to maintain a restriction on Sunday opening times to 5 p.m. and also 5:30 p.m. on match days. If I've got a seconder for that.
So the change from the proposal as outlined in the papers, you summarise, please?
Chair, could I just jump in on something? Councillor, if you could please clarify. I think some of the discussions you just said 5:30 on a match day, but I think a lot of the discussions were mentioning 7:30. Is that your intention, or did you?
When, so is that something that you can condition in planning, considering the match days, that the condition was up to 12 days per year? Is that something that comes under the licensing, the planning purview?
Yeah, so if we could have a seconder for that, and then we'll draft the exact wording and then read it out for the committee to vote on. Yeah.
But further to that, could the committee give its reasons for amending the condition?
I think because these people weren't there, and I don't accept that it's effectively the same thing, the same arguments being put. I wasn't at licensing, but from what I've heard today, irrespective of what they decided, I'm convinced that there is sufficient information for us to make that decision in our own right.
So, yeah, we can't have any comments from the public. Sorry, Councillor Fox.
I'm also not on licensing, and I believe the point that Councillor Sell raised is important in that, you know, we have somebody here who has young children. If that wasn't put to licensing, then I think that is an important point to take into consideration, and would make the amendment make sense.
So we have a proposer and a seconder for that amendment. So we need to give our reasons in support of that proposal.
We're just discussing reasons for the amendment, and then once the amendment or reworded condition has been drafted with the reasons, that will be put to the committee, and then that be voted on. It at this stage we're not. It's not debate on whether people agree on the amendment that would come at the vote. At this stage, we're purely looking at the reasons as to why you're amending the conditions, so that it can be put to committee to be voted on.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Sallal first, please.
I mean, it's amenity impact on the residents, in particular, as has been said, the impact on them is not just during the opening hours, it's before and after. It affects their children. I think that's very relevant. That's been said. But I think also, I mean, irrespective of what happened at licensing, as I said earlier, I was shocked by the close proximity of the drinking area and the outside noise to those houses. So just sitting here in my own right, as a member of planning committee, not a member of licensing committee, that's my opinion, irrespective of what licensing might have said.
Thank you. Any more reasons, Councillor Searle?
Yeah, I mean, it sort of just goes slightly further as well. How do you say it? So not because we don't think that licensing are able to impose, or sorry, are able to protect the amenity, but because we're a different committee, and we're considering this application under a different set of rules, and because planning committee consider, especially due to further representation from residents, planning committee consider the impact on amenity to the neighbouring properties to be sufficient.
Thank you. I'm just going to go to officers next.
It sounds that Councillor Stannard, you'd sort of mentioned the public sector equality duty without mentioning, because you'd referred to the residents' children. So I think members might also want to think about that in the reasons for making the change to the condition.
Just Councillor Delacorte would like to say something. We can't have two-way or three-way interactions. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just thinking of a few reasons really why I would be supportive of this amendment. It's obviously the noise pollution. The houses are in very close proximity to the pub, and obviously there has been current breaches of condition which has led to further noise pollution. We have tried to explore reasonable conditions without throughout this meeting to no avail. So I think that a condition to shut 2 hours earlier on a Sunday so that the residents can have some peace, I think that is fair and reasonable, and I would be happy to support it. Thank you.
So if it helps committee, can I suggest that hearing the debate, that possibly for the purposes of the minutes, that the reason, because there's two things, you have to have a planning reason following the condition, and I think that's to control that the condition is necessary to control the impact upon neighbouring properties. But what I was kind of after was the committee's reasons for changing the condition. And I think from hearing the debate, can I suggest that your reason for changing the conditions is that you have heard wider representation from neighbours adjoining the site, which has given you cause to have additional concerns about the impact of the operations upon the amenity of the wider area.
That sounds reasonable. Does it?
That wouldn't have been addressed by the licensing process.
I just want to know if we pass this with the amendment in there, will it set a precedent, because all the other pubs in the city have got houses joining them. And if we start saying, no, you can't do this, but this one where the houses are even further away from where the brewery is, you talk about the garden, you're never ever going to grant a public house extra hours or sitting outside or anything ever again.
I think a couple of points on that. A lot of the city centre pubs certainly are not controlled by planning condition. My advice to the committee on this point is this isn't necessarily a pub. This is something that's become something. It was a tap room. It's changed. It's in an area which has very close proximity to people who've previously been able to enjoy. Indeed, but I'm just this is. I mean, it's within the committee's gift to kind of make the decision, councillor. I'm not necessarily saying I agree with it, but I'm just advising what the committee can kind of say in terms of the consideration.
We'll move to the vote on that in a second. Is it essential? Does it add to the
Just in response to that, I suppose to give further reasons is because it's not a pub, it's a tap room, and it's about protecting from the further creep into hospitality establishment.
Councillor Giles.
Thank you. In considering amenity for the perspective of planning applications, are we allowed to take into account personal characteristics of specific existing occupiers in that area? And the second part of the question is in relation to the Section 149 public sector equality duty, how much weight should be put on that in relation to the detrimental impact of any decision might have on existing occupiers of a certain age, i.e. children in this case?
So generally speaking, we don't take into account personal characteristics of applicants, neighbours or anyone else involved in a planning application. However, where the public sector equality duty comes in, we can give additional weight to certain impacts because they specifically impact someone with a protected characteristic such as age.
So we have a proposal and a seconder for the condition, the amended condition. Would you be willing to read that out so we could vote on it? Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So the proposed amended condition that members will be voting on to change the proposal to would be the premises which form subject to this permission shall not be open to the public as customers for EB restaurant or drinking establishment purposes, except for between the hours of 12 p.m. till 9 p.m. Thursdays, 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. Fridays, 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. Saturdays, 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. Sundays, 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. Bank Holiday Mondays, and between 12 and 7:30 p.m. on any other day of the week when Norwich City Football Club men's first team or women's first team home games are taking place, of which shall be restricted to a maximum of 12 additional opening days per year.
So all those in favour of that condition, please indicate.
So voting in favour, councillors Oliver, Delacourty, Kane, Day, Fox, Giles, Haynes, Searle and Stannard.
Thank you. And all those voting against, please.
And that's Councillor Driver. That's Councillor Hampton.
Thank you. So we move to that condition is passed and now becomes part of the substantive item. Do I have a proposer for the recommendation to approve application as amended, application 26/00368/BC? Councillor Delacourty proposing. Well, I'll propose Councillor Delacourty second. Okay.
Yeah, so we'll need to vote on.
So we need to vote on that proposal. All those in favour, please.
So just
the proposal as amended. And all those voting against, please. So I believe there's no abstentions. Any abstentions? No. Thank you. I'm going to take half an hour break and then resume for the last two items. Thank you.
Could I ask Matthew Armstrong-Hickey to present the report, please?
Yeah, so just to confirm that the following councillors left during the break, which is Councillor Stannard, Oliver and Haynes, because they, some of them had other commitments.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, following applications to be considered 26/00460F, and 26000461L. The proposal is for the removal of boundary wall and construction of replacement wall to separate parking and garden to flats, alterations to steps and small rear extension to provide ancillary storage. Some members may recall the applications for this site previously relating to change of use of the site. Please be assured that this is not in relation to change of use, solely physical works to the rear of the building. So the site is outlined in red, St Martin at Palace Plain, located to the right-hand side, the south and southeast, and the end of the top end of the site, Pies Yard, accessed via Bedding Lane, which is a single lane track accessing into Pies Yard, which serves as the rear access to many of the homes along Riverside Walk and on the side of St Martin at Palace Plain as well. Common House itself is to the front of the building line here. These have an existing commercial premise in the upper ground floor and residential premises in the lower ground floor and first and second floors. The building is Grade 2 listed, and as are other properties to the sides as well. The location is within the city centre conservation area. So for context, it's the existing front elevation of the building. This is Cotman House pictured in front and adjacent listed buildings to the sides. This is unaffected by the proposal. Again, just more context of the site with the Wigan Pen pub to the side of the building. This is the relevant area that's part of the proposal today. The proposal relates to the removal of this rear boundary wall in its entire length along the rear boundary of the site. The proposal would also involve changing this curb line where there's some small grassed area for a drop curve for a new crossover into the site. The site as existing serves as extant parking serving Cotman House. This is on a raised level with steps that lead down to a slightly lower level that provides access to the rear of the building. This service yard also facilitates bins for the residential properties. Slightly zoomed out picture shows the access to the site as existing. So cars are required to take a 180-degree turn from Pies Yard into the existing parking area. So the proposal in front of you seeks to remove this wall in order to facilitate ease of parking by pulling from Pies Yard directly into the parking bays in the site. For context, this as well, Google Street image of Pies Yard showing the arrangement of parking belonging to the residential properties on the opposite side of the road. And an aerial view of the site with the proposed wall to be removed shown in red, as well as the relationship with other parking arrangements to the sides of the site. As you can see, cars do stack themselves from the road up to the rear of buildings. So there is quite a lot of parking requirements on this site, and it acknowledges the application acknowledges the need to create an ease of access into this existing parking site. As you can see, the current arrangement would require, let's take, for instance, this blue van to exit forward and take a 180-degree turn around. As you can see, there is another car parked in this location, so there could be potential issues with access, and I am aware of civil issues that have arisen due to this arrangement. So that's why, hence the application to remove this wall for increased access. So some of the plans, again, the internal plans of the building remain unaffected. The site plan in the top right-hand corner there shows the car park and steps to patio as existing. The proposal also includes the construction of a landlord's store on the rear end of this building, and that would be constructed in red brick to match existing wall materials. So this plan shows the proposed location of a new boundary wall, the steps to be removed, and new landing and steps leading down to the patio to account for the change in elevation. A boundary gate would be installed to separate the car park area from the amenity space of the existing flats. The boundary wall going across the middle here, and the proposed landlord store here. As indicated by the dashed line, that is the existing boundary treatment to be removed. I'd just like to take this opportunity as well just to highlight some of the objections in the that have been highlighted in the officer report. Previous iterations of the plans showed a solid line here, which were confirmed by the architects to indicate the ground level brick courses that would have been in the ground. And I'm going to assume that these might have been interpreted as the construction of a new boundary wall. So there were several objections to the principle of a new boundary wall in this location based on access to these garages. So it's my understanding, well, there is no proposed such wall, and it was my understanding that any confusion may have related to that. So I'd ask members to consider that when referring to the letters of representation. This gives a bit of context to what I was saying here. So brick soldier courses within the ground, and it's my understanding that showing this on one of the plans has led to confusion in terms of a brick wall being put in this location, which is not part of the proposal. So this is the site as existing wall to be removed. The brick wall to the side of the Wigan Pen car park is not proposed. There are elements of this that are historic flint wall, as is to the rear of these garages. That is a historic flint wall, is not part of the proposal to be affected. And the existing steps. And then the proposed, so to install a new boundary wall, it would be adjoining this flint wall, a new landlord store, removal of steps and steps down to this lower patio area level, removal of rear boundary wall and new dropped curb access. This gives a bit of context to the height, showing the elevations of the proposed wall and gate access. These details of materials and adjoining to historic walls would be required by a condition. Thank you very much. Sorry, I'll just finish. Yes, the application is recommended for approval, both the full application and list of building consent, subject to the conditions listed in the report. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So we don't have any speakers registered for this item, as far as I'm aware. So do members have any questions on the report? Councillor Driver?
Yeah. Cars will be allowed to park there, and it's up for businesses or just for people who live there or anyone?
Because the application is just relating to the physical changes to the wall, the restriction on parking is not part of this application. It was part of the previous application because we were looking at a change of use, but the number of cars that could park in an extant parking space is not material to the consideration of the removal of this wall.
And what does that mean if you want to change the use again? That's already done now, isn't it?
Is that, yeah. And well, so there's no proposed for the change of use. That's been refused. So yes, the wall was part of the proposal to be removed. Yep. But because we were looking at a change of use with a change in number of dwellings, that does then allow us to use policies that have relation to parking requirements, minimum and maximum restrictions that do allow us control over such spaces. For the existing parking arrangement, you can get a fair number of vehicles in there, but it wouldn't be relative to this application to put further controls on the use of that space at this stage.
Even though we turned it down last time.
Yeah, sorry, just to come in there. Yeah, we did turn the application with the change of use down, but it wasn't because of the loss of the wall. So I think if members' concerns are that this might make it easier, yeah. I don't think it does, because it doesn't address the reasons for that refusal. And that was because of the demand for the dentist and the loss of that facility. So it doesn't really bear on any proposals or any appeals or anything like that. So I don't think you need to kind of, well, you can't really have regard to that at this point anyway, because that decision's kind of gone. As I say, the main point is it wasn't part of your reason for refusal.
This house could be a public car park or private.
It would be proposed for the use of the building, so private.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from members? Yeah, Councillor Fox.
Just a small one. The grassed area is a really small area, but it is like a spongy area. Is there any way we could ask for that spongy area to be incorporated into part of the rest of the property in a different space?
It's not part of this proposal to do so, but in the recommendation, condition 3 of the full application is for details of the vehicle crossing and suitable surface water drainage to be submitted. So it is something that we are aware of, and the Highways Authority do want to see further details, because we do understand that that does provide some level of surface water drainage. So that does form part of the conditions that we're recommending to you.
Great, and the condition, the slat drain wouldn't be allowed. We do, as I saw in the proposal, that the slat drain wasn't going to be sufficient. And yeah, okay, thank you.
Just to come back on purpose of the recording, yes, so that's agreed, and it was agreed by the Highways Authority that that wouldn't be sufficient, and as such, further details will be required for discharge of condition.
Any other questions? No? Okay, in that case, we will move on to the debate. Does anyone have any comments? Any comments to make? No? Okay. In that case, we will move on to the vote.
Sorry,
no?
you'll need to propose whether you're going to approve it as per the report or not, or someone will need to propose approval.
Okay. Okay.
And sorry, just one other thing. There are 2 recommendations. There are 2 applications. So there's two votes.
But we can do it in one. Yeah,
Right.
so do it in parts. We can do it in one, or you can do it.
Okay. Okay. No comments. So I propose that, as per the report, we recommend both applications for approval. That's 26/00460/F and 26/00461/L. Just for clarification, I propose that we approve both of those. Do I have a seconder for that? Yeah, Councillor Kane. Okay, so all those in favour? Lovely, that's been approved. Thank you. Thank you. We're now going to move on to the final application, and that's 26/00355/VC, the Glass House. Could I please ask Vishnu Senath to present the report, please?
Thank you. The application reference 26/00355/VC. The application is seeking planning permission for the variation of condition 11 of previous planning permission reference number 4/2000/0265/F to extend the permitted opening hours. The site is located within the city center. It's a 2-storied public house located northeast to the Wensum Street It comprises of a public house accessed from the Benson Street. That's the pub. And as you can see, it includes that's the pub, and on the north side it includes an open courtyard which is outside the red line area, and over the Benson Street you can see both commercial and residential spaces. The premise is serviced from a car park at the rear over here, adjoining the Pig Lane. The car park is managed by the Maid's Head Hotel, which is located here. And the surrounding area is a mixed use comprising of predominantly commercial and residential properties. These are the views from the Benson Street of the adjoining buildings. As you can see, the ground floor is mostly commercial, and few upstairs are both commercial as well as residential uses. That's the view of the pub from the parking. As you can see, that's their beer garden. These are the properties on the other side of the parking area facing the Pig Lane. And this is the rear side of the Maid's Head Hotel, which is sharing this parking with. That's the rear side view from the parking of residences facing the quayside. And that's the image of the courtyard adjacent to the pub. And the proposal is seeking an extension of 30 minutes of opening hours from Sunday to Thursday, which would result in an opening of 7 a.m. to 1:30 a.m. and 60 minutes on Fridays, Saturdays, and days preceding bank holidays and on bank holidays, which would result an opening of 7 a.m. to 2:30 a.m. The application has been consulted with Norfolk Police and the Environmental Protection, and neither has raised any objection. The site is located within the city center leisure area and also form part of city center retail and secondary retail area. The Environmental Protection acknowledges the proximity of residential receptors in the vicinity. However, this is a long established use on site, and they have confirmed that no formal complaints relating to the premises have been recorded since 2012. They therefore consider that existing mitigation measures to be satisfactory. There are no changes proposed to the closure time of this external garden. It will remain as it is. An additional noise management and dispersal plan has been submitted, which includes measures to manage noise arising from the garden and smoking areas, together with procedures for orderly dispersal of customers. This will be secured by condition. The proposed extension of opening hours would also require a premise license subject to the grant of planning permission. And the licensing provides an established mechanism to regulate the operational matters and address any future amenity impacts. Additionally, there are existing planning conditions which restrict amplified music in the courtyard and limit the use of courtyard between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Overall, the proposed mitigation measures are considered satisfactory, and subject to the conditions set out in the official report, the recommendation is to approve. Yeah, there's been an update report just about to mention a correction in the report.
Report, there's a revised recommendation. So that's the bit of paper that was circulated ahead of the meeting, the revised condition in there.
Speakers registered for this item, so we'll move on to questions. Do members have any questions for this application? No questions? Okay. In that case, we will move on to debate. Any comments? No, no comments. Okay, in that case, I would like to formally propose that we approve this application. That's 26/00355/BC. Yeah, I propose to approve this motion. Do I have a seconder?
Sorry, just to clarify, that's the revised recommendation.
Yes, with the revised recommendation, sorry, with the additional conditions that have been recommended. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Day?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we will now move to the vote. All those in favour?
Yeah.
Unanimous. Lovely. So that's been approved. I think that is the end of business. So thank you everyone for sitting here throughout the heat.